Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? I have Councillors Garwood and Deputy Cabral that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of March 20th, 2024 come to order at 6:32 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, I've asked you to join us in the singing of the national anthem. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all arms commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Council, at this time, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And not seeing any, may I have a mover and seconder to call the public meeting to order, please? I have Councillors Fisher and Moore that the public meeting of council held under section 34 of the Planning Act for zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2024-005 of K Adams be called to order at 6:34 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Welcome to this public meeting of the Township Council held in compliance with Section 34 of the Planning Act to give public the opportunity to express their views in regard to the proposed amendment for the Township of Springwater's zoning bylaw amendment. The first part of this meeting is to present the amendment. Following, the public will be given an opportunity to make oral submissions through the Zoom application or in person. Any person wishing to make an oral submission is to have notified the Township prior to 8:30 a.m. this morning and being added to our commenters list. If a person or public body who files an appeal of the decision of the Township of Springwater in respect to the zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or written submissions to the Township of Springwater before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is passed, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Oral submissions will be included in the meeting's minutes and form part of the public record, including the name, address of the speaker, and information collected under the Municipal Freedom of Information Act and Privacy. These minutes of the meeting will be posted to the Township's website. ZB 2024-005 Adams of 2364 South Ore Lake Road. I will now call upon the clerk to confirm notice of this meeting and the dates to which notice was given.
Notice of this public meeting was mailed on the 29th day of February 2024 to the owner of the subject lands and to the assessed owners of 42 properties in the Township of Springwater within 240 meters of the area to which the proposed amendment would apply, and to all persons and public bodies as prescribed under the Planning Act and its regulations. Notice was posted at the assessed property to which the proposed amendment applies at a location visible from South Ore Lake Road. Notice was also posted on the Township's website.
Has the planning department received any correspondence in response to the notice of public meeting?
Correspondence was received from Enbridge Gas in an email dated March 5th, 2024, and from the Severn Sound Environmental Association in an email dated March 5th, 2024. All correspondence can be found attached to this evening's agenda.
Thank you. I will now call upon the applicant, Carrie Adams, to outline the purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment. Yes, please join us at the podium here. Either microphone is fine, but they are at a distance. So if you could take a seat and pull in close to the microphone, we would appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. And this is an excerpt from my application. Please accept this application to amend the temporary use bylaw agreement of July 27th, 2020 and convert the subject property to permanent status from temporary garden suite status. The use of the property has changed with the passing of Mr. Peter Demers in June of 2022 and the planned relocation of his wife, Mary, who was part of my family. An additional new dwelling has been completed on the property, and it would now be most suitable for multifamily or multi-generational occupancy. This aligns with recent government policy developments for the increase in housing availability and property utilization. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Adams. I'm actually going to ask if you could just restate your name and your address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Kerry Adams, and my address is 2364 South Orr Lake Road, Springwater.
Thank you for that. I know I said it a couple times, but it's to our clerk's discretion to have that. So thank you for that. I will now call upon the moderator to provide the number of people who have registered to ask questions or make comments regarding the application.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. There have been no members of the public who have registered to make comments or ask questions of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I will turn to our gallery. Are there any individuals who are present tonight that would like to make an oral submission regarding this public meeting? And not seeing any, I will now turn to council for any questions for Mr. Adams or staff. Not seeing any. That was quick and easy. Thank you all who participated in the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and for showing interest in this matter. May I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the public meeting? I have Councillor Thompson and Councillor Fisher that the public meeting of council held under Section 34 of the Planning Act for ZB 2024-005 Adams does now adjourn at 6:39 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for all your assistance.
Council, we now have our direction following the public meeting. May I have a mover and seconder, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Alexander. That council having held a public meeting in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13 as amended, zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2024-005 by K. Adams, having noted correspondence and input received, direct that the application be referred back to staff. Are there any further comments or questions on this? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. I will now call upon the Severn Sound Environmental Association to present, and I will also have a mover and seconder to get that on the table. We have Councillor Alexander and Councillor Garwood. The delegation from Severn Sound Environmental Association regarding the update for the 2023 pilot project to monitor the Wye River be received. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, and thank you, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor, and members of council, as well as any audience that may be watching. My name is Nikki Priestman, and I'm here with my colleague, Aisha Shondat. We are grateful for this opportunity to share the findings from our recent project looking at the piloting the inclusion of wastewater and stormwater effluent into the SSEA's existing long-term monitoring program. Next slide, please. We know that stormwater and wastewater carry nutrients and harmful pollutants into our receiving waters, so our lakes and our rivers. The first step to reducing pollutants is to collect baseline information, as well as to identify issues. For this project, we aimed to pilot the monitoring of wastewater and stormwater effluent from a rural settlement, in this case, Elmville, on its receiving water, in this case, Wye River. We wanted to demonstrate how SSEA can support municipal partners when upcoming monitoring requirements come into effect under the Consolidated Linear Infrastructure Environmental Compliance Approval. And also to map all stormwater and wastewater infrastructure across the watershed in relation to the existing monitoring sites that SSEA holds to show a benefit of a shared service model. Next slide, please. For this project, we chose 6 sites along the Wye River through Elmvale. Sampling was timed to capture snow melt during the spring and winter, and dry and wet period events were captured in spring, summer, and fall. We collected chemistry samples that were lab analyzed and collected a variety of field measurements, installed temperature loggers, and were able to collect measurements of base flow data during dry periods using a new handheld flow meter that we purchased through the project. Next slide, please. What you're seeing here is the project area. You have all received a copy of the map, so you can refer to that. We're looking at site SWM01 as our farthest upstream site, flowing with the river downstream and to our farthest downstream site SWM06. Next slide, please. Looking at the in-town sites selection, the stormwater drainage data provided by the township staff was used to delineate major drainage input areas, which was taken into account when selecting sites that would reflect stormwater inputs into the stream. Next slide, please. We utilized SSEA weather station data that was from LaFontaine and Midland, as well as the continuous stream flow gauge downstream Elmvale operated by the Water Survey of Canada, which allowed us to monitor flow conditions. This information was vital for selecting sampling events that were timed with rainfall and snow melt. Next slide, please. Here you can see SSEA staff in action. We have a staff member left to right. The left member is taking water flow readings with the flow meter. In the middle, taking field variables with the YSI. And then the last image is taking water samples. Next slide, please. Variables that were sampled for consisted of chemical characteristics as well as physical characteristics. The chemical characteristics, namely, were chloride, nitrate, ammonia, total phosphorus. And the physical characteristics were total suspended sediments or total suspended solids, temperature, and base flow. These were all taken into account when assessing stormwater and wastewater effluent impacts on the river. We looked at 2 different perspectives. One was how conditions change through the season, and the second perspective was how conditions change from upstream to downstream. I'll pass it over to my colleague Aisha to explain more and discuss further on the results.
Thank you. So next slide, please. So getting into some of the specific results, I'll just quickly orient you to the graphs that you'll see here. So the concentration will be given on the y-axis here with the different sites along the bottom axis. So it'll be the same for each variable. The vertical position of the box is the level of concentration that we're looking at. And the size of the box or width is sort of the spread of the data. So it gives us a sense of how variable each site is under the different conditions. So starting here with chloride, this is an ion that's toxic to stream invertebrates, which are really important in stream food webs. And we know it's increasing across Southern Ontario due to road salt application. Concentrations in the Wye River were below Canadian water quality guidelines, which is good to see. We did notice some interesting patterns. So chloride was higher at site number 1, which is actually upstream of Elmvale, and this occurred during all weather events. From previous sampling, we know that chloride is high coming out of Orr Lake. And this is likely due to salting on Highway 93 and also septic effluent can contribute. So we're actually seeing a dilution effect happening as we move downstream of Orr Lake. However, during snowmelt events, high concentrations were observed at the one urban site number 3, so likely in response to road salt application in town. This is an example where if only the furthest upstream or the furthest downstream sites were monitored, we would miss some of that in between effects. Next slide. Looking at nitrate, so this is a nutrient that's important for plant and algae growth. The highest value that we measured was approaching the Canadian Water Quality Guidelines, did not surpass it. We did see gradual increases as we move from upstream to downstream during each type of weather event, with the highest concentration at the furthest downstream site, number 6. Next slide. So I'm actually going to skip over ammonia just in the interest of time, but we can answer any questions at the end. Next slide. So total phosphorus and total suspended sediment or solids, we show these two together because they're tightly linked. So there's a portion of total phosphorus that's bound to sediments. So phosphorus is a really key nutrient that fuels both plant and algae growth, and suspended sediment in the water impacts fish and invertebrates. So we saw exceedances of the provincial phosphorus guideline, particularly during the spring snowmelt and wet events. Phosphorus and suspended sediment both increase from upstream to downstream during the snowmelt and wet events, with highest concentrations in wet events. So this indicates that material coming off the landscape is driving these higher levels. Next slide. So I'm also going to skip over temperature in the interest of time. So next slide, please. So we mentioned measuring base flow, and this is basically the amount of flow in a stream that is not runoff. So it's maintained by groundwater inputs, and it's basically the level of the stream in between rain events. So it's important to measure because paving over areas can impact groundwater recharge and reduce that base flow. So that's obviously bad for all life in a stream if streams or rivers start to go dry. And streams and rivers can also become flashier and more prone to flooding with those impacts. So we saw that base flow was highest in the spring and lowest in the summer, which is a typical seasonal pattern. So we can't really tell too much just from 1 year worth of data, but tracked over time, this is something that we can sort of look at impacts from paving different areas. So next slide, please. In addition to the scientific results, we also wanted to provide you and our other SSCA partners with a cost analysis to implement a monitoring program like this, and the benefits of using a shared service model like what you have with the SSCA. So this table shows the actual cost for us to run this pilot project. So this was funded by a provincial grant, and the amount required to keep this program going would be less. So we would see efficiencies in staff time for different shared costs if we had multiple partners involved, and some of the logistics would be easier now that we've gone through this once. There's also some line items that would depend on the number of times we go out and sample. So we do recommend going out at least as many times as what we did. And other equipment costs, such as the flow meter and other equipment you see here, would be zero moving forward because we've already got those things. So those things, considerations would bring the cost down. Next slide, please. So some recommendations specific to the township. It's not a requirement yet from the province, but we do require or recommend continued monitoring, at least at the upstream and for this downstream site, just to start to establish sort of a baseline of that water quality. And the township can optimize some municipal operations sort of based on some of the patterns that we were finding, and there will be a more detailed report forthcoming. Across the watershed more broadly, where SSCA monitoring sites do exist, we recommend using some of that long-term data and those existing programs. And also looking at designing monitoring on a watershed basis, so not just on municipal boundaries, because we know that the effects of stormwater and wastewater are cumulative. Next slide. So to summarize, we know that water quality was impacted in the Wye River from wastewater and stormwater effluent. And monitoring these impacts is really important because that can inform future action. Using SSCA as a shared service delivery partner is a very cost-effective way to continue this type of monitoring, which will become mandatory in the coming years. Next slide, please. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention and thank the province of Ontario for funding this important project. And thanks to our staff who braved some weather conditions and your staff for providing some information for us. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Right. Thank you very much for the presentation. At this time, I can turn to council for any questions or comments. Councillor Alexander.
I'll just make a comment. Thank you both for coming out and thank you for all the work that you did. I think we're very fortunate that you did choose Elmville for the pilot project. I know both Councillor Garwood and I got to brave the stream and try and figure out how to use some of the equipment, which I don't think we were very good at. So clearly we are not scientists, but a little more appreciation for the work that you do. And it's very interesting data to come out of it. And I think it's so important as, you know, there's so much climate change and so much things going on. If we don't understand the impacts of our current lifestyle, we don't know what's happening in the future and there's no way to fix it if we don't understand what's going on right now. So I really do appreciate all the work that you've done.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Alexander took my words right out of my mouth there. I don't know about you, but I think I could figure out that flow meter. I'm kidding. I really couldn't. But I wanted to thank you again for participating in this project and for you both being such great resources for this council and for answering my questions over time as well, and for having us out there at the White River last year at Heritage Park. I learned a lot about the SSCA and still continue to do so. Thank you again for the presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Just wanted to say on a side note, we came up, I think a few Fridays ago, most of our council came up to Midland and attended an open house and information session. I myself found it very informative. I got to speak to a few different members of the board. And so I just want to say thank you to the SSA for that. And thank you to Councillor Alexander for letting us know how important it was leading up to it. So thank you.
Yeah. Anything further, council? Not seeing, I do have this moved by Councillor Alexander and second by Councillor Garwood. The delegation from the Severn Sound Environmental Association regarding the update for the 2023 pilot project to monitor the Wye River be received. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I will call upon Matthew Corey to give a presentation on, sorry. Yes. Oh, and I will.
Hello, Mayor Coughlin.
There we are. Okay, I was.
I'm online. Cheryl's going to kick things off. She's in person. I am very sick, so I didn't want to come and inflict that upon you. Otherwise, I would have been there in person, but I'm still here virtually at least. So thank you for having us tonight. And with that, Cheryl, happy to have that. And we also have a presentation deck, I think, that could be shared. That'd be great.
There's something here that I need to turn on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corey, and welcome, Cheryl. And I do believe, do we have the slide deck prepared? And here it comes.
Your worship, I'm just checking to see. Oh, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you okay.
Okay,
And,
super.
Deputy Clerk Marshall has it in the background, so please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor Coughlin, Deputy Mayor Cabral, and members of council, staff, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cheryl Shindrock. I am Executive Vice President at Geranium, and I'm here this evening also on behalf of our partners, Condor Development, Countrywide Homes. I'm joined this evening by Matthew Corey, who is unfortunately under the weather, although he looks pretty good to me. But he's good enough to join us remotely, so I appreciate that. We are here this evening in connection with our development proposal for lands in Centre Vespra. The subject, you could probably, you can see them up there nicely. The subject lands straddle the northern boundary of the settlement area. And as such, an expansion to the settlement area is required to facilitate the development. The property is about 65 acres in area. The western portion of the Stone Manor development that was built by Yorkwood and Tribute Communities is situated immediately to the south. We are here this evening for two reasons. Firstly, to speak to our request for council support for a minister's zoning order for the proposed development. We have filed that submission with the municipality along with all the technical studies and reports. And we are in the process of coordinating our public information session as your protocol calls for. We understand that an information report is coming forward to you soon, perhaps even at the April 3rd council meeting. But secondly,
And in the meantime, and perhaps more importantly, this evening we have a separate request. And that is set out in our correspondence of March the 7th. We're seeking council support for a minister's modification to the County of Simcoe official plan to modify the settlement area boundary for Center Vespra to incorporate the subject lands to facilitate the eventual development of those lands. As Mr. Corey will shortly further explain, County Official Plan Amendment Number 7 has been with the Minister for approval since August of 22, some 18 months ago. So there is a window of opportunity to ask the Minister to make this modification when he deals with that planning document. And given the time that the County OP has been with the Minister, we expect that window to close soon. However, that opportunity is there today. Thereafter, the county would be in a position to reflect that modification in the township official plan, which it has with it for approval. Somewhere since June 2023, I think the county has had the township OP. We would then focus on working with the township staff and council to process the plan of subdivision to build approximately 400 homes. This is in keeping, in our opinion, with the provincial mandate to deliver more housing more quickly to address the housing crisis we are experiencing in Ontario and most severely in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which includes Simcoe County and Springwater Township. So with that, I'd like to call on Mr. Corey, who's going to provide you with the planning and technical rationale for this request and describe briefly our development proposal.
Thanks, Cheryl. And if we go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. So just a bit of background for council on the process and timeline. You're well aware of some of these dates. August 9th, 2022 is when COPA 7 with the county was originally submitted to the MMAH. We all know the fun times that have been going on with the province and everything they've been doing. So it has been some time for them to deal with that, and it's still before them for approval, as we all know. But as Ms. Shindrick said, we have some opportunity here because of that as well to advance some housing that needs to be advanced. In February 2nd of 2023, we made a submission to the ERO on this property with regards to the potential of it. Flash forward to March 6th, we also provided comments to the Township of Springwater as part of your official plan review process. And then, of course, in June of last year, you adopted your new official plan, and that is before the county as well, waiting for approval from them. Then in November of last year, we had additional comments on the Springwater OP. March 15th of this year, this is of course us now requesting the MZO and advancing that process. And in discussion with your staff, I think for the ministry to look at this and to advance things in a way that helps everybody, it really helps to have, and you need to have the technical work that's behind it to advance things. And that's exactly why we ended up doing a lot of that work and then providing that as an MZO request, because this is an MZO request, to be clear, we're making with the township directly through your process to work cooperatively to try to find a solution to this through that process. And then, of course, we're here tonight. Next slide, please. Just some mapping context, because I'm a planner, I have to show these things and love to show these things. We're right on the edge, and we're actually partially in the settlement area. You can see in the southeast corner, there's a little bit of the properties that are in the settlement area in the county official plan. Next slide, please. This is the township official plan, obviously currently designated agriculture, but just on the northwest edge of Center Vespra. And if we go to the next slide, please. This shows you the Center Vespra community plan, Schedule A5 to your official plan. You can see that green strip is the hydro corridor, but we're immediately abutting the existing residential uses that are just recently built to the south. Next slide, please. And very importantly as well, of course, we're right next to the Center Vespero wastewater treatment plant. And the engineering work has been done to confirm that the lands can be serviced from the existing municipal Center Vespero wastewater treatment plant, and that's located immediately to the east of us. Next slide, please. And then we've also looked at water, and we have the engineering feedback from our engineers that the lands can be serviced by the existing water treatment system. And of course, there are 4 wells located within the Snow Valley area with a water reservoir and a pumping station east of the subject lands that we would be taking the water access from. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So in support of the request, and this isn't just one of those requests that comes at you and doesn't have the background in it. This is a request where there's been a tremendous amount of work done already to make sure all of this makes sense. All these technical studies have been done. Obviously, our planning opinion report, functional servicing engineering reports, the water and wastewater assessment, the environmental impact assessment from Beacon, traffic study, phase 1 ESA, of course, the archaeological work, geotechnical and hydrological report, noise and vibration, and urban design brief. And the reason to mention all these studies, these are the studies you typically have to have and would do to actually approve zoning and to advance the subdivision application. So we've gone to that level of detail and analysis to make sure this all can work and make sense in before bringing this request before council. Next slide, please. So that what you see here is what Ms. Shindrick described. That's the way that the lands would be lotted out in a plan of subdivision. Hydro corridor on the south, a very regular pattern of streets and lotting throughout the plan. And then, of course, in the southwest corner of the plan, that's where the stormwater management pond would be, as well as a park that would serve these residents and give them amenity space. Next slide, please. And then the stormwater management, this is just showing that the stormwater management has been planned out and the routing of it makes sense and it works and can deliver all the stormwater to be effectively treated in the southwest corner. Next slide, please. Similarly, sanitary sewer collection can be collected and in this case directed easterly over to the existing wastewater treatment plant, almost in a direct fashion because of its proximity. Next slide, please. And the water distribution system similarly can connect to where the wells are and the source water is and be logically delivered through the site. And with the next slide, please, I'll kick that back to you, Cheryl. These are the next steps if you'd like to cover these off.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corey. So I realize we're on a 10-minute timeline. So in terms of the next steps as we see them, we are hopeful to have council's statement of support this evening for the minister's modification to the County of Simcoe official plan. We will continue to coordinate with staff in terms of the scheduling of the public information session in accordance with your MZO protocol. We would hope to be back here before you sooner rather than later on the council's consideration of the actual support for the MZO. And we would be certainly following up with the county once the county official plan is approved on the approval of the Springwater official plan. And then, as I noted earlier, along the process there, we would work with staff to process the subdivision application and hopefully have shovels in the ground sooner rather than later. That concludes our remarks, Your Worship. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. At this time, I will turn to council for any questions or comments of Ms. Shinder. Councillor Fisher?
So just wanted to say, in the spirit of building houses quicker, I think this is a very logical thing for us to go ahead with. I also have to say the proximity to utilities makes it logical for us to go ahead with. So I'm in support.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. And before I do go on to more comments, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder. I will have Councillor Moore and Councillor Fisher and turn to Councillor Moore for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If there are no more questions, then I'll just proceed. That the motion now before council be amended as follows, and that is to add that council, understanding that the applicant has submitted a ministerial zoning order, MZO request protocol application, and are proceeding through the requirements as this township process, hereby supports a request to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for a modification to the County of Simcoe official plan through a modification to COPA 7 to round out the Center Vesper settlement area to include the subject lands.
And it's the seconder on that. I have Councillor Fisher. And then any comments or questions on the amendment that is being proposed, council? And I will turn to staff for any comments or questions additionally. Not seeing any jumping in. So at this time, we have the amendment read before us by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All those in favor? The amendment has carried, and we will go back to the main motion as amended. And I will ask the clerk to read the motion as amended.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The motion would read that the delegation from Matthew Corey of Malone Given Parsons regarding a request for support for provincial modification to the County of Simcoe official plan be hereby received, and that council, understanding that the applicant has submitted a ministerial zoning order request protocol application and are proceeding through the requirements of this township process, hereby supports a request to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing for a modification to the County of Simcoe official plan through a modification to COPA 7 to round out the Center Vesper settlement area to include the subject lands.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Any further questions from council? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Get better soon, Mr. Corey.
I'm trying. I'm taking antibiotics and all kinds of things, but thank you. Next time I hope to be there in person.
I will now call upon Adrian Graham, our chair, and Jane Cocking, our vice chair of the Springwater Public Library, for a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, members of council, for having us this evening. I'm Adrian Graham, the Springwater Library Board Chair, and beside me is Jane Cocking, our Vice Chair. Next slide, please. So, unfortunately, with inaccurate comments made at the council meeting on February 21st, 2024, regarding a motion to contract out library services, replacing library management, which is the CEO, and the competence of the current library board, we wanted to make a delegation this evening to clear up some misconceptions. The comments, along with subsequent media coverage, only served to further alarm both library staff members as well as community members. Unfortunately, once again, library staff have been flooded with requests for clarification around what is happening with our award-winning library system. The library board feels it's necessary to clarify on the public record accurate information about how the Public Library Act works and the role of both the library board and township council. It should be noted that all the information that we're going to share this evening was provided to council members when they began their current term. Also, the information provided this evening has been verified with both the ministry and the Ontario Library Service. Next slide, please. So the short answer to the question in this slide is no. Under the Public Libraries Act, Township Council has no legal authority to just contract out library services for an existing and thriving library system. The Public Library Act grants library boards the status of a completely independent corporation as soon as the library board is established by council bylaws. As such, library boards in Ontario are separate legal entities, which is accompanied by certain obligations and responsibilities. While library boards endeavor to work in cooperation with municipal councils, library boards are tasked with providing independent governance and planning of the library system and are responsible for providing a comprehensive library service that reflects the community's unique needs. Next slide, please. The CEO is the management of our library system. The library board hires the CEO and evaluates the CEO's performance. The CEO is an employee of the board and reports to the library board and not the municipality. While the board's role is one of governance, the CEO's role is operational. Incidentally, our current CEO has a BA as well as a Master's of Library Science. I'd now like to turn it over to Jane, who'll provide some background on our library board members.
Thanks, Adrian. Your worship, members of council, I am Jane Cocking, the one and only. I am in my second term of the library board as currently as vice chair, and I'm also a 30-year resident of Midhurst, and library means a lot to me. But we want to get into who else sits on the library board, because I understand the competency of the library board was brought into question. So you can see on the slide our incredible board up here. So the responsibility of municipal council is to provide library services following the PLA, that's the Public Library Act. It does this by appointing the library board to a term which is concurrent with your terms as council members, and to approve at the library board's budget estimates each year. Library board members are Springwater residents who volunteer their time on the library board, and they govern the library board and the library. This slide, again, provides information about the current members of the library board. And as you can see, again, the collective collaboration, education that we have is quite significant. Extensive experience in a number of sectors, including strategic planning, finance, governance, and policy. And just as an adjunct, council does not have the authority to remove any board members. Madam Clerk, next slide, please. Council representation. So library boards must have council representation on the board, although this representation can never be in the majority. Our current representative is Councillor Thompson, who I believe is joining us virtually today. There is an established process in place supported by the PLA, whereby any questions or comments from council should be directed to the council representative. He or she will then bring them to the library board for discussion and outcomes. Alternatively, a council member could delegate the library board, just as we are delegating to you this evening. This process was deliberately developed under the PLA to avoid the word is politicization of library matters, and to respect both the library and the library board as independent legal entities. The system is designed to develop a collegial and respectful relationship between council and the library board. Historically, the system has worked well and is in place across the province. Madam Clerk, please. Next slide. Thank you. The library board, again, we're required to fulfill a number of requirements as outlined in the PLA, again, Public Library Act, and we do have our own bylaws. We have open public meetings 10 months of the year, as well as ongoing meetings of the committees you see up there. These meetings are also public. Library finances are reviewed at each board meeting, and we are audited every year by the same auditor who audits the township. We are required to provide the province each year with financial statements and a comprehensive overview of the library programs and services. I'm going to turn it back to Chair Graham for
Thanks,
some
Jane.
closing comments.
Next slide, please. As a board, we've begun work on our strategic plan. Currently today, we just closed our public survey that we are pleased to report has more responses than any other public survey in Springwater's history. On this slide is a wordle of the words that have appeared the most on the survey. The bigger the word, the more frequency in the survey. We're really pleased with the results and look forward to completing our strategic plan to continue to provide award-winning library services for our quickly growing and diverse community. We feel that it was really important that correct information be provided to our community this evening on the public record. We're hopeful that this information will help calm the waters. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you for that, Chair Graham and Vice Chair Cocking. At this time, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to receive it before we have any questions or comments. I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood, that the delegation from Adrian Graham, our chair, and Jane Cocking, our vice chair, at the Springwater Public Library regarding the Public Libraries Act be received. And at this time, I'll move to comments or questions from council. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. First, I wanted to thank the chair and the vice chair for coming out tonight. The work that you all do is incredible. So again, and I wanted to congratulate Councillor Thompson as well for being a great representative from this committee as well for our community and for our libraries. You know, when I saw this on the agenda, I was very pleased. Speaking from my personal experience when it comes to the library, we are extremely fortunate to have a dedicated and professional and passionate Springwater Public Library Board who continues to grow and enhance our library. Again, this is more of a comment, but I think about all of the accolades that the library has received over the years, especially the 2023 TD Summer Reading Award and your strategic plan and having all those responses. I think we all know how difficult it is sometimes to get responses from various avenues. So I wanted to congratulate you both and congratulate your board on all the great work they're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, your hand is extremely large when it's in front of there. Councillor Thompson.
Well, sorry, I also would like to thank Chair Graham and Vice Chair Cocking for coming tonight and sharing this important information with us and with the public. We'd like to thank Ms. Cocking for reminding us that these are volunteers and residents of our community. I've had the privilege of working with them for a year and a half, and I've been extremely impressed with their dedication to our community and the great work that they do. I want to thank them for the great contribution they make to our community. And thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. Yes, the bench strength of that slide is quite impressive. So thank you for that. And Councillor Fisher?
Well, I am the one that questioned the competency of the library board, so I might as well just come out and say it. Quite honestly, I'll tell you where that comes from, right? I don't know any of you individually, except for Mr. Thompson. My questions have always arisen from the finances behind the library. And quite honestly, as I said in the last meeting, you know, I've had several questions stemming from library vans to $1.7 million asks for renos. So, you know, I've always approached it from a fiscal standpoint, and that's where I do question it. You know, just the other day, I went through the credit card expenses, and our library, a member of our library, I'm assuming the CEO, spent $1,700 at the Royal York, right? So I do like the library, and as a matter of fact, I agree with this. Community is the largest word there. And I agree that, and I've said this before in council, it is an integral part of our communities, the North and the South. My problem doesn't lie with the library. My problem lies with the fact that we as a council are not allowed seemingly to question the finances behind the library. And as I said to you before, as I said in council, you know, another strat plan, and you've had many, was asked for in this budget, and you were given it. But the explanation I was given was for incidentals. Whether it's $5,000 or $50,000, it has to be accounted for. And I'm sorry, I always feel that when myself or other members of council question the budget or question things that surround the library, feels like we're told we're not allowed to ask. And frankly, any other department, whether it's the fire department, roads and fleet, we're allowed to ask those questions. So one thing that that I'm hearing is that, yes, you are separate, but you still come to us for the budget. So that's where those comments came from for me. And, I'd be happy to take any questions if you wanted to say anything.
Other members of council? Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you both for coming to do the presentation, and thank you for your work as well as the rest of the board. It is very appreciated. Anytime there's volunteers, it's a lot of work, and it's very appreciated, and I am continuously impressed at the engagement of the people that support the library. They come out in droves, they obviously fill out surveys in droves. Always very impressed with that. I have had a couple issues. Mr. Graham and I have had conversations in the past, and my point has always been, regardless of how the Public Library Act works, and I do learning more, and I do appreciate that, there is a partnership between the library and the township as part of that in council. And it is in everybody's best interest if that is a collaborative, productive partnership, which means there needs to be open ways of conversation on both ways. And I think everybody's voice needs to be heard and taken into consideration. And sometimes I struggle with that because I feel like that's not happening, and that's just my opinion. So certainly, but I do think that's a road we need to move forward with. And to speak a little bit to Councillor Fisher's concerns with the budget, I have also had some concerns with the budget. And again, been put in a position, I felt that if I don't just automatically approve or I question, that's looked upon very badly. And I think it is very important for everyone to remember, regardless of who controls the library, who the management and the staff, it is ultimately, we all answer to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is allowed to have concerns. And those concerns do need to be taken. So whether they are coming from us representing the taxpayer, or they're just coming to you, those are serious concerns, and we need to always be aware of those and be willing to have discussion around it.
I had, Chair Graham and then Councillor Fisher.
So yeah, thank you very much for those, through you, Mayor Coughlin. Thank you for those comments from councillors. A couple of points there, if I can remember all the points that were raised there. First of all, in terms of the budget for Councillor Fisher, I mean, we did go through the budget process this year, and we presented, and it was passed by council, and we had, I thought, were the appropriate discussions at the time. In response to Councillor Fisher around incidentals, I think actually we gave you 3 reasons for the request around strategic planning. One was that we might need to bring in someone to help us for 1 or 2 days, but we weren't hiring someone full-time for a strategic plan. So it wasn't, for instance, an ask of $25,000. It was for someone for maybe a couple of days. It might also have been for if we needed to go off-site to have some sort of meeting for that, and then other incidentals. And I think I made a joke at the time about the cost of bottled water. So I think we gave you more than one response there of what that was. Secondly, the question about the comment of a budget, which puzzles me because what we described to you tonight, actually on slide 6, is the process to question us. We're more than happy to have questions about whatever topic you have about whether it's budget or anything else with the library. But there is a process to go through, and that is, as we've described, it goes to Councillor Thompson. It would come back to our public meetings. We would discuss it, and we'll provide a response. Councillor Alexander has communicated with me individually about a couple of concerns with library, actually specifically with library staff. And it was explained at the time that those are investigated appropriately, but that would be because of labor law and because staff and our staff, that would be private and internal investigation, that the results wouldn't be shared with you, but they were taken care of. So that, I guess that would be my pushback on that. I think we're completely open to any discussion. I agree exactly what you say, and that's what we've said in the presentation about a partnership between the library board and council, but there's an appropriate process to go through that we've described tonight, again on slide 6. Around how to communicate with the library board, and that, as Jane said, it's in place across the province, and it's in the PLA for a specific reason, to keep that that cooperation yet separation between the two bodies. That's the point of that being in the PLA, and we are more than happy to follow that process. So Councillor Fisher, if you have specific concerns, pass them again through Councillor Thompson, communicate and bring it to us.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher?
Yeah. Through you to Mr. Graham, you know, I do have concerns about the library and actually speaking of going through our council member, during the library or during the budgetary process, I'm just reading here, you review library finances every meeting. I've gone through your minutes. I can't find any evidence of that. But during the budgetary process, well, I'll ask you first, how did you feel about using the position that was asked for by the library as a bargaining chip to get additional COLA for staff members during the budget? Can you comment on that?
I know at the time that Councillor Thompson had come back to us from council asking if there was anything we were willing to look at in the budget to help with the COLA situation on the side with the board. We had indicated that we had asked for a couple of items extra on top of our operating budget. One was about the strategic planning, the other was for a position. And that we understood that one of the things that we would be willing to do, and we discussed it as a library board, would be if we understood that if council needed funds for something else, if there was one of the two items we were ready to give up in terms of this round of bargaining or budget estimates, that yeah, sorry, that's my education background coming in. Budget estimates that would be the position we give up, because we also recognize that we often ask for a position and it takes a number of years for that to be approved. So we talked about it as a board and we were comfortable with that decision, and we asked Councillor Thompson that he could come back and discuss that with council, and then it was up to council whether you decided to take us up on that or not.
Following Councillor Fisher and Deputy Cabral.
So, you know, with all due respect, you can understand the optics of that. During the budget, that position was fought for. We were told as a council how integral that position was. Then, within a short period of time, it was being used as a bargaining chip, and I will say bargaining because that's really what it seemed like to me, to get a raise. So, you know, this is where I question the board, and particularly from a financial aspect. You know, asks are coming forward, and then they're being used as a bargaining chip. Also, I have to say, I did not find, and I went through around the budget time, I did not find any evidence of discussion of that in your meetings. So maybe there's some sort of shadow board I'm not aware of, but you can understand where questions would be raised. I mean, do you not, Mr. Graham?
Before I ask, and I'm just going to try and control the temperature of the chamber here.
Okay.
It's been many years since I have sat on the library board, but I do remember that each of our boards, it was we would go through the finances, and at that time we had just implemented the door check. So how many times the door opened, how many times patrons came in, and we evaluated how many customers we were serving, and it was on a monthly. So if you could just describe for members of the public what the board goes over at their meetings as to where their finances are and where the patron counts.
Sure. So through you, Mayor. Yeah, so every meeting we discuss budget. CEO brings forward to us where the budget is in terms of expenditures and expenses, what's over, what's under, what's still we're waiting for with things like grants. Exactly, the patron sort of door check coming in and out, and that is discussed at every meeting. I can't say what how much that's reflected in the minutes, because it's something that we look at and say, okay, if we have a concern with it, we'll raise it. So that's done every meeting. And once again, we have a separate finance committee that looks after that. Evan Chen is our chair of the finance committee. And they work specifically on the budget estimate. So that's that process. To respond to Councillor Fisher, I can't speak to the characterization of a bargaining chip. That's not something that's ever been brought to us. What was brought to us from Councillor Thompson was that we'd asked for a number of items. There was, council is trying to balance their budget. If there is an item willing to give up, which one would we be willing to give up? And we thought at the time that the strategic plan was more important right now. We would go ahead and say, okay, if you need the money for something else, but to characterize that as a bargaining chip as somehow that the library board had something to do with, that we're not cognizant of that characterization. And no, we don't have any sort of shadow library meeting. We have public meetings that are open to the public, and there's a process on the agenda of how to attend those meetings, as well as the separate 4 committee meetings are open to the public as well.
Thank you for that, Chair Graham. And I'm actually going to turn to CEO Schmidt. The prioritization of, I'm going to say, needs and wants. departmentalize. When council is presented during budget and we get the program changes from staff, those are prioritized by staff. And when council asks for them to be reevaluated, does staff not go back and reevaluate the priorities and then re-present them to council appropriately? CO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. So to clarify, yes, township senior staff do meet on a regular basis to discuss budget. And essentially, we look at all the wants and needs, if you will, of the organization. Any new requests for new staff does come through a program change with a justification provided as part of that. And we do have multiple conversations around the table before they're presented to council in the final budget to determine which ones we can, they're prioritized, if you will. And to your point, if council, through those discussions with council, if they wish us to go back and reprioritize and or find additional savings, that is done through that same group of individuals.
Thank you for that. Councilor, are there any further? Oh, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You steered it in a different direction, but I'm going to bring it right back to where it was. And the reason I'm going to do that is because last year during the budget period, I recall that I struggled with the additional position for the library. And I asked that maybe it could be reduced, maybe someone with lesser qualifications could do the job. And I actually voted for it to go through at that time. However, between that time and the next budget deliberations, some comments were made here at this council chamber. And I don't think there's any need for me to name who it was because we know who it was, with respect to giving up that position for an increase in COLA. And I just want you to know that at the subsequent meeting of budget, when your position came up again, I specifically stated that I could no longer support it because of comments that were made at the previous meeting of council, specific to the COLA and the position. I didn't name names. However, I didn't forget it either. The other piece is with respect to, and I'll be honest with you, I glance over your minutes. I don't really delve into them. But when we talk about minutes and something like that comes out at a board meeting, that should be reflected in the minutes because I think it serves to appear very disingenuous now, unfortunately, that was the conversation that took place and, kind of slid right by. But since it's been brought up, I really couldn't let it pass without bringing it to your attention that that's the reason why I voted against that position the second time around at the final budget deliberations. Thank you.
Councilor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Thank you very much for coming before us. I did sit on the library board for 4 years and it was a great experience. And when I looked at the Libraries Act, even though it's a small act, it is a bit vague in parts and it's a bit misleading, particularly Section 29. And I think that folks have reviewed Section 29 and it's been interpreted differently. So I would like to ask staff to go back and provide a report if we can, or at least do a bit of research on what Section 29 looks like, or at least to explain that to us. And I'll just say Section 29 talks about contracted services, because I think people have read that and like I say, interpreted it one way potentially, and when in fact it could really mean something different. So I think it would help us all to investigate that just a little further.
Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Fisher. Thank you. And Clerk Ainsworth, I'm just going to ask you to read the amendment is brought forward, and I have it moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Councillor Moore, please let me know if you'd like any changes to this. The amendment would read that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add and that staff be directed to provide a report to council outlining the provisions included in section 29 of the Public Libraries Act regarding contracting of services.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Could I just add section 1 also, please? I think it's section 1. I'm going to have to say section 1 and 2. I don't have it in front of me, sorry. And that talks about
think-
establishing a library
I
board.
think that's 3.1.
Is that the library board piece?
Yeah, it's the establishment of a public board.
Yes,
3.1.
thank you. Thank you.
Probably also want to look at 42.1 as well.
If you have a copy of it, I'd be happy to look.
And I think maybe just so that we're not being inclusive or excluding anything, I think that provisions of the act that involved forming and contracting of services.
Yeah. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, may I ask?
I'm just actually going to go to Counselor Moore and then I will come back. to
Thank you.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you very much. It is lengthy, so if we can avoid going through all of it and just maybe we can talk about it after which exact pieces that I'm looking for. And I'm really just trying to clarify what it does say.
Clerk Ainsworth is to provide a report to council. Yes, the staff be directed to provide a report to council outlining the provisions of the Public Libraries Act.
You can Google it too.
Yeah. And I do apologize, Vice Chair. I'm going to turn to CEO Schmidt just to ask for what specific, understand that we do not need a staff report on the entire OLA. Oh,
Graham has, if I could just take a quick look.
Sure.
sure. Thank you.
That'll.
And at this time, I will ask for Vice Chair for your remarks.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Moore, I just want to understand when she is saying a staff report, if she means library staff or township staff.
It would be through our local
Thank you.
council,
Thank you.
or sorry,
That's
not
helpful.
council,
Thank you.
municipal staff. I'm going to take a quick second here between. Clerk Ainsworth, I will turn to you for the amendment, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. To read that staff be directed to provide a report to council outlining the provisions of the Public Libraries Act regarding the sections of establishing of a library board and contracting of services.
And Councilor Moore, I just want to attest that you're satisfied by the act regarding establishing of library board and contracting services.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So council, we have had that read. All those in favor of the amendment? And that has carried. And if there are any additional questions at this time? Councilor, so we do have the amendment that is carried, so we're back to the main motion, so everything's back on. Is this specific to the amendment or? Okay, Councilor Fisher.
Just a point of clarification. The volunteers for the library, are you not paid a stipend to just,
Yes,
just to clarify about the volunteer, I believe $80.
I wish. We're paid a pre-tax $40 per meeting for 10 meetings a year. No payment for any other committee meetings.
Thank you for that. So it's much like our volunteer firefighters or other volunteers sitting on the NVCA. Thank you. Are there any other questions? We will go back to the main motion. Not seeing anything. I have it moved in second. All those in favor of the main motion as amended. And that has carried. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
This evening. Council, we now be moving on to question period, and I will turn to Clerk Ainsworth to see if there has been any submissions received.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been two submissions received, and I will read them on their behalf. The first one is from John Spring of 2438 County Road 92 in Elmvale. And he states, I watched the regular meeting of council on March 6, 2024, and heard Councillor Thompson bring forward a motion of reconsideration to start talks with Barry again regarding the boundary adjustments. Barry is seeking from Springwater Township. It was with great shock to hear him state that he felt we should be at the table when these talks were going on. I think Councillor Thompson has missed the point, along with another councillor who also expressed his opinion that he did not want to see the motion split into two separate actions. The first dealing with cross-border sharing. My apologies. The first dealing with cross-border service sharing and the second being boundary adjustment. Even though Councillor Thompson in his original motion did not seem aware that Barry had already given a definitive no to cross-border service sharing with Springwater. Yet he did not mention this fact in his motion to council. He did say as well that Springwater would get a 10% revenue share as well as $8 million from the city of Barry. I would like to know where he got this information, as this has never come out until Councillor Thompson stated it. Without a concession being made by Barry regarding cross-border sharing, there is absolutely no reason to continue talks. The provincial government has said it wants a local solution to this matter. Does it not make sense to say no to discussions until the cross-border services issue has been settled? Barry must know that negotiations are not one-sided. It was with interest that I noticed that two councillors that did not want the motion split are from wards that will not be affected at all by a boundary adjustment. Along with this, has anyone thought to ask farmers, homeowners, and business owners that could be affected by boundary adjustments, how they would like a significant increase in their property taxes? My question is, why would council entertain a reconsideration of a motion before recommendations were presented to them by the Springwater staff? Councillor Thompson must understand that anything happening with Barry must be good for Springwater residents. Can Councillor Garwood and Councillor Thompson elaborate on how this adjustment can benefit Springwater Township?
Thank you for that, Clerk Ainsworth. Councillor Thompson.
Well, so through the chair to, excuse me, to Mr. Spring, I'm losing my voice here. Let me take a drink. Well, first of all, I think any kind of boundary adjustment would affect all of us. I thank Mr. Spring for his question and giving me an opportunity to really clarify my intent. For me, it's common sense to have our reps at the table when the future of our township is being discussed. And to clarify, Barry did offer us cross-border servicing, but they wanted something in return for our wastewater. On January 25th, CBC Radio interviewed Mayor Nuttall, and in their interview, Mayor Nuttall said that he was offering both Oro-Medonte and Springwater what he called the largest compensation plan between two municipalities in the history of our province, and I'm quoting him directly. He also included in that statement a 10% revenue sharing of any new taxes that would be created through this union and $8 million in new taxes from the land that they were willing to service in our township of Springwater, which equates to a 30% increase in our tax base. And for me, those numbers are big. Also, the City of Barrie staff report sent to the province in December listed numerous Springwater taxpayers who sent letters to the province supporting Barrie's proposal. I think it's important that we hear from more of our residents in the actual affected areas. Finally, Premier Ford was in the Barrie area last Friday, urging us to work together for a local solution. I don't think any of us want a one-sided solution. I think if we're back at the table, we should be working for a solution that works both for the township of Springwater and for the city of Barrie. That's why I think it's important that our representative be at the table when the future of our township is being discussed. And again, Mr. Spring, thank you for the question.
Thank you. I have Councillors Garwood, Fisher, and Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And thank you, Mr. Spring, for the question. Questions should be posed to members of council. It is our responsibility to be accurate and accountable to the public. I stand by my comments at the March 6th regular meeting of council, where I indicated it was my opinion this council should be at the table. As Premier Ford indicated last week, this is what we do here in Ontario. We work together. The Premier further added, I encourage you to cooperate. It's going to benefit your community. It's going to benefit everyone's community, and it's going to drive prosperity. I agree with Premier Ford. We should work together to find a solution. This is our responsibility. We cannot wait for the province to step in and make the decision for us. Whether it be Minister Calandra or Premier Ford, the province has been crystal clear. A local solution is preferred. I noted multiple times during the last meeting that I am in favor of discussing options that result in the best possible deal for all residents of Springwater. While I live in Elmvale, the decisions made at this table affect every corner of this municipality. To suggest to members of this council representing wards that do not border the city of Barrie care any less than others would be inaccurate. I urged council to resume talks and to enter discussions with an open mind, just as I do when I walk into these chambers. I do not claim to be a master negotiator, but I do believe it is my job to gather accurate information, and if a good deal can be made, advocate for it. If I do not advocate for what I believe is right for the betterment of all of Springwater, I am not doing my job. So thank you, Mr. Spring, once again for the question and for the continued conversation.
I have Councillor Fisher and then Deputy Cabral. Deputy Cabral.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin. Thank you very much, Councillor Fisher. I do appreciate that. I just think the key piece here is that if you're going to be providing information, it should be accurate information. And there's two different things that came up at that reconsideration. One was specific to cross-border servicing. The other one was specific to a boundary adjustment. And I think Mr. Spring's piece there was talking about trying to keep those two pieces intertwined. And I can tell you that they are absolutely two different items in my mind. Of course, that's my opinion. And with respect to Councillor Thompson's comments from listening to the CBC radio thing, and also that there were some letters sent in support of City of Barrie's position on boundary adjustment. I just want to point out that I attended the standing committee meeting in Ajax in January, where Oro-Medonte, Mayor Randy Greenlaw, and Deputy Mayor Peter Lavoie were there. I went to listen to what they were going to present. And at that time, they not only presented their position, which did not support a boundary adjustment, it actually supported proper planning by following the policies, procedures, and the Planning Act to move forward. But in addition to that, over the course of a few days, from what I understand, over hundreds, I'm going to use the number 400, but that might be a little bit high, but I would suggest at least 300 plus handwritten letters and petitions were presented to the standing committee at that point in time supporting Oro-Medonte's position on that. So just for a clarification, we're going to have someone supporting the City of Barrie's position through the odd letter. I think it's only fair to say that that is not the case. And I would suspect that if we were to reach out to our own residents, that should be maybe something that we could do to see exactly how our residents would feel about a boundary adjustment where all of a sudden they would be paying higher taxes through no fault of their own. So I just wanted to clarify that particular piece. And I want to thank Mayor Greenlaw and Deputy Mayor Lavoie for going and making a presentation to the standing committee in respect of Mayor Nuttall's and the City of Barrie's presentation back in November.
Councillor Fisher.
I thank Mr. Spring for his comments. A few things I picked up on, and I don't really know where to begin with this, but you know, wards 4 and 5 stand to lose the most land. This is something that I feel is being discussed. And I frankly, I worry about the proposition that was brought to us previously. We stand to lose a lot of land, and I think that I don't think that Mr. Nuttall brought us a very viable solution. I also think going back to the table, as we did just recently, to talk about border servicing, as I said, this was a dead end street. I don't know why we did it. And I think that a local solution is something we need to look at. But I believe that there was a motion on the table last meeting from Deputy Mayor Cabral. And I think we should frankly, I think we should go back to staff, see what solutions we can get before we run headlong into a discussion that really is it's not very fruitful. So, you know, I thank Mr. Spring for his comments. I can tell you I'm very worried. One thing I worry about, and I think it's not being thought about very much at this table by some members of council, you know, once we start giving away pieces of land that we as Springwater could be developing and reaping the tax revenue from, once we start doing that, we as a municipality, we're a growing municipality. We're growing in terms of expenses as well, and we're taking on some pretty large projects. So for us to start giving away land and hacking it off in the 4th and 5th ward, I think it's very short-sighted. And, you know, as a resident said to me, what municipality are we looking to join once we're effectively bankrupt? So I think we as a municipality need to think not about our individual wards, but as us as a municipality. So.
Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Mr. Spring, for writing in the letter and the question. I do agree a local solution has to happen. I think Premier Ford has been clear on that. And I think it is the best way to proceed is to have all parties at the table having the discussion. What I think has not happened yet and will be happening soon from the direction of last meeting is that we do need a fulsome staff report on what our options are with respect to cross-border servicing, the economic development zone, the many different options that we can then go have a discussion with the city of Barrie on, where we have our own recommendation and our own want. Right now, we are in a position where they have a very specific want that does not benefit Springwater that much, in my opinion. And we're just fighting little pieces of that until we know what we really want as a township and what we're willing to give up per se in order to get other certain things. I don't even think we should be at the table because we need to figure out where we are first and then we can go have actual negotiations.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Mr. Spring, for your comments and for your indulgence this afternoon and the days prior with respect to this. I agree that the indication has been that there needs to be a local solution. The local solution that we're looking for really comes down to, is it a Springwater local solution or is it a partnership? And the reason for having a meeting to establish whether a partnership can still exist or not is you are correct. We know what we want. They know what they want. And if we're not willing to come to the table with what they want, there is no conversation to be had. Can we service our lands? Can we develop ourselves? Absolutely we can. It's just time and money. And how much time and how much money is what that conversation is. We do have pressures from the province to build more homes faster, not slower. And so really it's, if we're looking for an internal solution, this can happen. This is not something that's beyond Springwater's capability. We can service these lands. We have identified buffer zones. It is simply a vote of council whether those buffer zones remain or not. It's also just simply a vote of council as to whether we invest in ourselves and push pipes up that far. We have capacity at our ultimate wastewater treatment facility that is dated and slated for existing developments. So to bring on additional developments would require additional capacity, which requires additional funding. So this is all time and money. So you are right. If we're looking for a local solution, we can look internally and come up with a solution ourselves. But as far as partnering with the city of Barrie, it was made very clear that we have nothing to offer if not land. They are not looking for a fee for service or an à la carte service to their pipes, their treatment facility and their water. They're not interested. They have their own to take care of. And if there's nothing in it for their residents, they're not interested. So we've heard that loud and clear. And I think that you are correct. The redirection needs to be, if not partnering with the city of Barrie, what is our next steps? How do we move forward with these projects that we have endorsed, that we do believe are a benefit to our residents? So that's our next step forward. I think that if we're not, as we've stated, we have a resolution whereby boundary adjustments are off the table. So the conversation with Barrie no longer exists. That was made very clear to us in an email, and that was the intention of the email, so that it wasn't my interpretation or our interpretation of the meeting that was provided directly to us from the city of Barrie. So thank you very much, Mr. Spring, for your comments, and we have a long road ahead of us, but not one that we can't figure out ourselves here internally. At this time, I will turn to the clerk to see if there's any additional questions.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There has been a submission received from Esther Allen of 28 Boothby Crescent. And Ms. Allen writes, I'm writing to request that the petition regarding the proposed expansion of the Gallagher Materials Lewis Pit at Seaton Road and George Johnson be included and presented to council in the upcoming Springwater Township meeting on March 20th, 2024. And included with this submission, council was sent a copy of the petition earlier today. In light of the upcoming town hall meeting, which aims to speak to residents regarding ongoing initiatives and upcoming projects, I feel the significance of this project/plan deserves heightened discussion and attention for community members who may not be aware of the proposed plans, and as such, am also requesting that council include an update for residents on this project at the town hall meeting with opportunity for Q&A. As of now, we have gathered over 1,000 signatures from concerned residents who are strongly opposed to the expansion. The expansion project raises significant concerns within the community regarding its potential impact on our health, environment, cultural heritage, and protected lands, quality of life, and the decline in market worth of our homes. I ask that you present this petition to the council and urge them to review the comments and reasons provided by the signatories. Each signature represents a voice in our community, and it is imperative that council members understand the depth of opposition and the underlying reasons behind it. We kindly urge Springwater Council to stand by residents and support our campaign to halt this expansion. Our community's interests and well-being is of utmost importance, and I do not feel the proposal by Gallagher Materials to operate this expansion a mere 30 meters from residents' properties aligned with Springwater's official plan or is in the best interest for our residents. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I look forward to a positive response and the opportunity to address this issue further at an upcoming meeting.
Thank you for that. Clerk Ainsworth, can you speak to the request for inclusion at the public open house, please?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Council will be hosting a town hall meeting on Wednesday, March 27th, here at the Administration Center from 7 to 9 p.m. As directed previously by council, the format of the town hall meeting is a drop-in style. There will not be a formal presentation. However, there will be various information centers providing capital project updates, large development updates within the township, and various other projects that are ongoing or significant to the township. At this point, there is no formal question and answer period scheduled. However, residents are urged to drop in, speak to members of council, speak to members of staff, asking questions on various matters. Now, as it relates to the Lewis Pit specifically, there is currently an ongoing Ontario Land Tribunal matter, and I would ask if Director Herron could provide some context relating to that.
Director Herron?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The it appears the request is to make the Lewis Pit request for expansion of pit bring more attention to the public on it. I would point out that it's no longer in the purveyance of the Planning Act process. It's moved on to a semi-judicial process, which is a legal adversarial process. So the opportunity to present it to the public may well have passed. However, I would add that when it was
being reviewed through the Planning Act, there was a public meeting held here in council for the public good to both bring to the public what is being proposed, but also to secure comments from the public. So there has been ample opportunity for the public to inform themselves. I would add that planning staff will be at the open house. And while the open house is intended to be generalistic in nature in terms of sharing what's occurring in terms of development and happenstance in the township, staff would be there to answer generalized questions about the application. However, we would not be able to get into discussions pertinent to the OLT hearings and positions, legal positions.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth, are there any other questions or submissions?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no other submissions received ahead of the cutoff schedule.
Thank you. At this time, I'll turn to members of the public for questions during this period. And not seeing any, we will move on to our minutes. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes, please? Councilors Moore and Fisher, that the minutes of council listed herein be approved. We have three, we have one, the minutes of the regular meeting of council of March 6, 2024, two, the minutes of the special meeting of council March 6, 2024, and three, the minutes of the special meeting of council closed session of March 6, 2024. Council, are there any questions on these minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. And now we move on to our boards and committees. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the minutes of the boards and committees and organizations, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Councillor Thompson that the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations listed here and be received for information. I have the minutes of the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting of January 16th, 2024, and to the minutes of the Severn Sound Environmental Association meeting of October 6th, 2023. Any questions on these, council? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to our action reports. May I have a mover and seconder for the report regarding the Community Safety and the Community Safety and Policing Act, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Fisher that the report from the Director of Corporate Services / Clerk regarding the Community Safety and Policing Act appointment of policies to the Board of Council Representatives dated March 20th be received. And one, that council appoint the following two council member representatives to serve on the Joint Huronia West Detachment Police Services Board for the concurrent term of council. Two, that council support that all members of the board be paid a remuneration in the amount of $150 per day, which is equal to the remuneration paid by the provincial appointees, subject to the approval of the Township of Clearview and Township of Wasaga Beach. And three, that council direct staff to send a joint recruitment notice to the three community representative board positions based on appointment and eligibility requirements outlined in the Community Safety and Policing Act. And four, that council support the cost for the Huronia West OPP Detachment Police Services Board be allocated equally for the year of 2024 among the municipalities to receive OPP policing services from the detachment, which is currently Clearview, Springwater, and Wasaga Beach. And at this time, council, we do need to appoint two members. So I have Councillor Fisher. Your microphone, please.
I would like to appoint Deputy Mayor Cabral to the board, or nominate, sorry.
And a seconder for that would be Councillor Garwood. And I'm not sure that any of us would have the extensive experience to suggest otherwise. So I feel that that is completely appropriate. And there isn't a formal, will you accept the nomination on this? This is a passion of yours, and I'm assuming that you would like to do that. So our first one, council, we will, my apologies.
Oh, no.
All right, well, we can just move through that. So the first one would be Deputy Mayor Cabral, and all those in favor of Deputy Mayor Cabral, and that has carried. And a second nomination. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Councillor Fisher, who has expressed an interest, and because there has been some crime, particularly in Ward 4 and 5, I think we need somebody in the South to be sitting on the board, watching closely sort of what's happening and making sure we have a presence and a policy as we grow. So I would like to nominate yourself.
Thank you for that. Counselor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Seeing as we've just appointed, can I speak?
Sorry, I was looking for a seconder. Thank you, Counselor Alexander. And I will speak to that and understand the temperament of council. It is appropriate, and there will be from all other municipalities, it will be the mayor that sits on that. But I do understand that this council is wishing not to have that happen. So in appointing a member of council and not the board, it will be at this time, I can confirm, but it will be Clearview will have, and I'm sorry that Mayor Measures and Mayor Smith will be sitting on that. So it is the discrepancy of this council whether they wish to have their mayor sitting at that table or not. So it would either be myself and Deputy Cabral, or at this time we do have Councillor Fisher being put forward. So I'm just letting you know that the appropriateness, that is to the discretion of this council. Councillor Garwood and Thompson and Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. When I put my hand up to speak, that's what I was going to reference. No disrespect to any other member that's interested. Again, I think we have many qualified members that can sit on this committee and sit on the board. I think Deputy Mayor Cabral is very much one of those. But I was going to recommend that both of our heads of council sit on that board moving forward.
I have Councillor Thompson and Councillor Fisher.
I would concur that both members, like the mayor and deputy mayor, should sit on the board. Sorry, my voice isn't good.
You sound horrible. Like, how are you even enjoying being there? Thank you for not being in chambers this evening. It's much appreciated. Councillor Fisher.
I can appreciate the sentiments of the last two members. Although I would like to be on the board, and I'll share with you why. I do believe we need representation in the north and the south. We are a very varied municipality, probably with similar and different policing needs. I can tell you in Midhurst or Ward 5, I'll speak to Ward 4 and 5 because it's my end of Springwater. We have seen an uptick in crime. Very recently, we actually had a home invasion in not far from my own house, actually. We've had numerous car thefts throughout both Ward 4 and Ward 5. I would say actually predominantly in Ward 4. So crime to some extent is becoming an issue. And I think frankly, with the amount of growth we're about to experience with the subdivisions being built, frankly, I think having a representative who lives in the community is an advantage. So I would like to stand for it.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for that. And I do understand that I'm sure that we would all like to sit on a committee that community safety and policing affects all of our wards. And as the mayor of the township, I do represent all individuals and all wards equally. So it's not that just because my house is in Anton Mills doesn't mean that I have preference to Anton Mills. I mean, I think that we're spread out across it. And I mean, there was most recently a $20 million drug bust right across the road from me. So there is crime and there is much happening throughout our municipality. So I do have moved and seconded to appoint Councillor Fisher to the board. And I would like to express to this council that I would like to sit on this board. I think that it's very important as a head of council. I do sit on our monthly meetings with Gilroy and as they stand today. So I do feel that it is appropriate that the mayor is on there, but if it's this council's decision not to have the mayor sit on that, that is to the discretion of the majority of council. So we do have it moved and seconded to have our second appointment as Councillor Fisher. So at this time, I'll ask for all in favor. And that has carried. So our second appointment is Councillor Fisher. Councillor Alexander?
Sorry, I just wanted to comment. And if, because I had read through the report, and if it is kind of the way that other municipalities are going, or there's something along the lines where the mayor is going to be the representative, it would be helpful if that was on the report, because when I read through this, my understanding was we were just, appointing two people versus, even when we've gone through the committee selection at the beginning of the year. sorry, the term. There's certain ones that were kind of laid out that this is where the mayor usually sits. So moving forward, that's helpful information to have kind of going into these discussions. That's just a general comment for staff with respect to that type. So thank you.
Mhm. And while I can appreciate that, I did make that clear that it is typically the mayor that sits on this. So during the conversation, this is a decision of council and the decision has been made not to include the mayor. So Councillor Fisher?
Sorry, just to clarify, you said typically with other police services boards aren't, and for my own clarification, are they not new when you say typically?
You are correct. These
Yeah.
are new and they haven't been, I mean, we have our April 1st deadline. There is still an outstanding, I think over 140 to still be affirmed by the province moving forward. So this is, when I say typically, I meant within our own police servicing board. The intent is that Clearview will have their mayor, Wasaga Beach will have their mayor, and Springwater has chosen not to. Thank you. We have Deputy Cabral.
Sorry, Mayor Coughlin, and I do apologize in one respect. I recall at some point in time, and I stand to be corrected by CO Schmidt, that at one point in time, a staff member, I believe was the CAOs, were going to be placed on the police services board. So I just sitting on the fence here because that's what originally was presented. And actually that was the only person on the police service board that was identified other than another member of council. So I have to agree with Councillor Alexander that if it had been stipulated a little bit better like that, things might have gone a little bit smoother. So I apologize if there's the miscommunication, but if I step right back, it was actually the CAO of each municipality was going to sit on the board. Am I correct, CO Schmidt? I believe that was something that came up initially.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mark Coughlin, through you to members of council. So maybe just to clarify, so the township currently has a community policing services committee, which essentially has the mayor for each municipality, Clearview, Springwater, and Wasaga Beach sit on that, as well as each of the CAOs. But that is a committee. So just to, again, to clarify, there are police services boards already in Ontario. So those that do not have a police service board with the OPP, that are policed by the OPP, will now under this legislation be required to implement or have police services boards. So, and to the deputy mayor's comment, when this originally came to council, there was some discussion even amongst Clearview and Wasaga and ourselves about who would be sitting on or who potentially could be sitting on as council representatives or municipal representatives. I took the position as I'm CAO and it's a board. I don't have a vote. And so from that perspective, my thought was that I would still be attending some of these meetings, but not in a position where I would have a vote. It would be there to kind of take notes and to maybe clarify any comments that maybe were made. So moving forward, again, it's up to each municipality to determine who sits on that board. I believe that was where Clearview and Wasaga may have indicated that they're mayor and deputy mayor, but I don't know if those decisions have been made at this stage. So.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just going to add to the comments here. I know nothing's changing at this point because we've already voted, but regardless of what was presented, the motion says the following two council members. So that was clearly laid out on the agenda. Secondary is, I personally would have liked to be on the board. I think we all would, but we can only appoint two. And I was under the impression, in agreement with Councillor Fisher, we should have representation across the municipality. So our two heads of council, who are the only two members of this council that represent every single ward in this municipality, should be the ones who sit on this board. And we have crime in every part of our community.
Thank you. So we are back to the main motion now, Clerk Ainsworth. Do you need it as amended with the two names? So we do have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Fisher in number 1. And unless council requests me to read it again, not seeing that. All those in favor? And that has carried. We are now moving on to our action reports, and may I have a mover and seconder for the action reports, please? I have Councillor Moore and Deputy Cabral, that action reports 10.2 through 10.11 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. We have 10.2, our insurance renewal, 10.3, our breathing air compressor fill station request for proposal, 10.4, animal control and pound facility service agreement, 10.5, 2024-02 IOS award of wastewater pump refurbishment, 10.6 Hillsdale Athletic Association request for project scope change, 10.7 the NVCA Category 2 and 3 program services, 10.8 Stone Manor Woods have 2A and 2C certified for final completion, 10.9 ZB 2024 Van Velzen, 2512 Sunnydale Road, 10.10 award tender of 2024-17 iOS 2 2.75 ton pickup trucks, 10.11 award of tender of 2024-09 iOS 3 light duty pickup trucks. Are there any that we wish to pull to deal with separately in changing the direction of the motion? None to be pulled. Are there any comments to be made? I have Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just wanted to briefly make a comment on 10.6, the Hillsdale Athletic Association request for the project scope change. I wanted to thank Manager Dean for working closely with Mike Kelly on this request. It is appreciated, the work that staff puts into this type of collaborative partnership. And I would also like to thank Mr. Kelly for his continued amazing fundraising efforts. I think I've said it before and I will say it again. You want to have a fundraising committee, get him as the chair because he knows how to raise money. So thank you to both the people. I think it's actually a great opportunity for the entire township to have these facilities in Hillsdale when they're finished to use. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any additional comments? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just, maybe a point going forward, I'm not necessarily making any kind of comment, but I think at some point in time between now and September, we might, I might very well ask to discuss the insurance issue going forward. I'm not putting an IFC out or making a motion per se, but since we're on the topic, I think we did suggest that we would look at it last year in around September and it didn't happen. So I kind of think that coming down the pipe, that's something that I will probably bring forward again.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Not seeing any other hands or questions. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Council, we are at 8:20. Is it the discretion of council to take a quick recess? Clerk Ainsworth has said yes, so we will listen to her. So we will take a quick 10-minute break and we'll be right back. Council, we are now moving on to our information reports. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the reports, please? I have Councillor Fisher and Councillor Moore that the reports listed herein be received for information. 1, our building service monthly report. 2, our bylaw service monthly report of February 2024. 3, our credit card register of January 2024. 4, our check register of February 2024. 5, our 2023 annual accessibility status report. 6, ZB 2024-08, block 60, plan 51M-430. 7, OP 2024-001, ZB 2024-02, 1084 Coglan Road. 8, 2023 water system annual summary reports, and 9, 2023 Q4 procurement summary. At this time, council, if there's any to be pulled to deal with separately for redirection. Councillor Fisher? Number 7 to be pulled. Additionally, at this time, are there any for comment? Seeing no comment, at this time, we will be dealing with all items except for, with the exception of OP 2024-001 and ZB 2024-02, 1084 Coglan Road. We will now be approving items 1 through 6, 8, and 9. All those in favor? And that has carried. And at this time, I need a mover and seconder to have number 7, OP 2024-001 and ZB 2024-002, 1084 Coglan Road, pulled by Councillor Fisher and seconded by Councillor Alexander. Councillor Fisher.
I just pulled it because I had a few quick questions to pose through you to Mr. Heron. I just wanted to know, it's a very interesting proposition here. 2 questions for you. One, I'm assuming it's within the Anton Mills settlement area. And also question number 2, is this a draft plan or is it just a zoning change as it seems to be in here?
Director Heron.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, and to Councillor Fisher, the property is within the settlement boundary for Anton Mills. And the application is for change of use. So under the Planning Act, there's really 3 functions. There's change of use through OPA and zoning bylaw, which they've applied for in this application. There's site design through site plan, and then there's lot creation, plan of subdivision. And that's the second part to Councillor Fisher's question. There is no application to create lots at this time. The application is simply to change the land use to allow for the eventual creation of lots. So they're asking, I think the report explains what they're asking, to change the designation from and to, and the zoning bylaw from and to. The applicants will often submit a conceptual lotting plan, and they have done so with this application as well. And there's Appendix A is the draft development concept plan, which would lead one to think that it is an application for plan of subdivision. I thought the same thing when I first saw it, but at this point it's not. It's just change of use. So the uses they're asking for would reflect somewhat the lotting plan. There's environmental protection sections that they're looking to either maintain or install. There's a stormwater management block, which would allow for eventual development, a park block, and then areas for lots and roads, which would be standard residential zone and designation. At this point, there's no determination. The review is just commencing, and we would be moving forward to a public meeting on the application for change of use, OPA and ZBA. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Just a quick follow on, actually 2 more questions. One, I took a look at the, through you to Mr. Heron. I just took a look at the overview of the potential subdivision and compared it to the what do you call it, the picture above on page 2. It seems like only half of the subject lands are being used or proposed. That's my first question. The second question, it looks like there's a lot of EP portions here. Are those mandated, or is that, I just noticed it in the drawing, is it mandated in the eventual?
Through you, Councillor Coughlin, The, on page 2, that's actually a very good distinction. The aerial photograph shows, the entirety of the property bounded in red. The application, on the lower picture on page 2, simply describes the lands where they're asking for change of use to occur. So the request to change the official plan designation and zoning bylaw would only apply to a portion of the lands that they own. So that's the distinction between those two graphics. And the EP zone, without getting into a lot of analysis in detail, I would suggest that they're likely hazard lands. So I know that there's steep slope there, which would be a hazard land. You know, not allowed to build on it, which is and then I believe the EP lands they're showing to the north is both hazard land and wetland. But that all is to be determined in detail as we review the application.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I just, the settlement area for Anton Mills, is there a piece there that stretches up Horseshoe Valley Road as well? This falls within the settlement boundaries of Anton Mills, but is there also a stretch that goes up? I think it would be the north side of Horseshoe Valley Road. I'm just curious because when I was looking at the GIS mapping to see how this all fit in, there was a stretch that went up there, but it was just seemed to be on one side of the highway, which didn't make much sense to me.
Before I do turn to Director Hepburn, I can speak intimately to that property. That property is owned by Michael Coughlin. It is 76 acres within the settlement area. There is a road allowance off of Horseshoe Valley Road that stems right across from where Wilson crosses Horseshoe Valley. There is a road allowance that would reach north into that back property, which is also within the settlement boundary. And at this time, there is no plans to bring forward any further development on that land. So this land that we're talking to is the west of Coughlin, and there is additional 76 acres on the east of Coughlin, which is also inside the settlement area.
Okay.
No, I do not own this property that we're speaking to this evening, if that helps
No,
anybody.
not at all.
I wish I did. My family used to own it, and my husband remembers fondly that wetland that they speak to used to be a pond when it was owned by my father-in-law and I guess grandfather-in-law at one point. So is there redirection for this motion? No? Comment?
I was just gonna say, it seems like a very interesting project, or, you know, best of luck to them. I know it's a rough neighborhood, so maybe, Sean. No, but, no, it looks like an interesting one. That's why I pulled it. So just want to ask some questions.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. We are now moving on to our verbal updates, and at this time, our development update. I will turn to CEO Schmidt or Director Hepburn. You can rock, paper, scissors for it if you need to.
Thanks, Mayor Coughlin. So just a couple updates here to share with council tonight. So starting with our neighborhood one in Carson Road area, Midhurst Valley subdivision. So the developer, as council may be aware, is anticipating to launch a sales program on their phase 1B, which is the Hickling lands in the second half of this year. And they are anticipating building permits hopefully in early 2025. Keeping on that side of the ledger here, Thompson Lands, they are continuing with their topsoil stripping and earthworks, and they do intend on servicing that property in 2024. The commissioning of the interim wastewater plant at Snow Valley and Wilson is ongoing, and the agreement with the Midhurst Landowners Group for the ultimate award for the wastewater treatment plant is now anticipated to be determined in April of this year. They're going to finalize the award of that project. Flipping over to neighborhood 2 over Gill Road, Midhurst Heights subdivision, construction of the water treatment plant and sewage pump station continue, and commissioning is anticipated in 2025. The contractor continues with the installation of the sanitary force main between Spence and Belmont on Finley Mill. And this section of work is anticipated to be completed by June of this year. And just I would also advise that a notice to residents has just recently gone out with regards to the construction on Finley Mill Road. So they are looking to extend their construction area to essentially go up to Dorn Road. So they're looking to start that work as early as next week. So that construction area will be expanded, if you will, in that area, and traffic will be in one direction as it is right now. So stop there, Mayor Coughlin. Happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, council. At this time, are there any questions on our development updates? And seeing none, we will now move on to our municipal updates, and I believe it's at this end of the table this time.
Get the beat Matt to it. I don't have a lot of municipal updates from Ward 5, but one thing I would like, and this is important to all Springwater residents, it's actually an NVCA update. And the NVCA actually recently acquired, just about a month ago, they finalized it, 75 acres in the Minising wetlands. I can tell you a bit about them. It's mainly forest. It's abutted to land that they already own, so it joins their land. They intend to work on water quality improvement, flood protection, habitat for species, and even recreation. I can tell you a bit about the lands. 25 acres were acquired through federal funding, and another 50 acres were actually donated by a Springwater resident. So, very nice. The name of the game with it is conservation, and so it's right there in our backyards. But I think it's a nice thing that's happening environmentally for us. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I do know that Mr. Parker was a strong advocate of the wetlands and actually sat on council here at one point. So it's really nice to have that dedication to him and that generous donation on his behalf. Councillor Moore. All right. And Councillor Thompson.
Just like to remind everybody of Anton Mills Rabbit Run and Easter Egg Hunt on March 30th. Registration is required, and we've got lots of spots open, so please come and join us. Our Anton Mill group of Naughty Knitters are actively supporting our Library Smile campaign, and we invite the public to join us. The program is giving back to the community. In our partnership with Elmville and District Food Bank, we're looking for donations of candies, nail polish, sunglasses, fun socks, magazines, and candy to make gift bags for Mother's Day. We're also, our library is having a volunteer tax program is running in the Elmville branch, and there is a income requirement. So anybody that would like to participate in that, there's details at the branch. We're also happy to announce that during March break that our local libraries served more than 200 youth for March break programming, and we thank them for their service.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Deputy Cabral.
I don't have a county update. It was a very short meeting, but I do have
Just your microphone. Thank you.
Sorry. But I do have a question if I might be indulged. I'd really like kind of like an update if there's any available on road conditions out there.
Maybe we can do that just at the end of our community
Yeah, that would
updates.
be
We'll turn
good
back
because we might
to-
go a little bit longer then.
We can turn back to Manager Paul at that time and maybe give him a couple minutes to think about what that update might look like, not to put you on the spot. But at this time, I will turn to, I have Councillor Thompson who may have something additional to add, and then Councillor Alexander.
Road conditions here are fine.
Thank you so much for that, Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So the Felton CRA will be hosting their annual Easter egg hunt on Saturday, March 30th. Always a fun event. If you are interested in going, please check the Facebook page or reach out, as it is by registration only. And I think there's limited spots left, as the Easter Bunny does need to go shopping. As well, on Friday, April 5th, the SSCA will be holding an open house just to learn more about what they do, ask questions. There's a couple speakers, and that will be at the community hall in Elmville. I believe it's from 1 to 5.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit Huronia Centennial Elementary School in Elmvale. During this visit, we had the opportunity to answer questions about municipal government and celebrate the Easter season by cooking with the students. So I would like to thank Miss Layla for the invitation to your class once again this year. It was a fantastic time. Today, actually, the vendor applications and package for the 2024 Springwater Farmers Market Elmvale presented by the Elmvale BIA went live, which is exciting. We've already had quite a few people over the last few weeks reach out in regards to being a part of our market this year. So folks are excited about the new time. You can visit the BIA website for more information to download that and register. This past weekend, the Elmvale CRA hosted our Shamrock and Roll event, which was a lot of fun. We had over 150 members of the community come on out and have a fun evening of dancing and live music and community celebration. So that was really nice. Again, I wanted to just plug the town hall that's happening next week. I know it was mentioned earlier on, but March the 27th, so a week today from 7 to 9 p.m. The Township of Springwater is opening its doors to invite the public to come on out and learn a bit more about ongoing activities and upcoming projects at the town hall. Meet your council, meet your staff. 2 more things, I promise I'll be almost done. One other item I wanted to mention was the hanging basket program in Elmvale. As we get closer to the summer season, we know that those hanging baskets are a constant as you drive down Queen Street. So if you're looking to purchase one of those, you can visit the township's website. And the last event that I like to mention is just the blood donation event that's happening April 13th at the Elmvale Community Hall. I believe it's from 9:30 to 2:30, and you can sign up online. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And before I do go to Manager Hoff for a road update, CO Schmidt looks like he has a correction of a date or a time or something in here. CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mark Coughlin. I just wanted to put a shout out there for our Trails Open House tomorrow night, being hosted here at the Administration Center. 6 to 8 p.m.
Thank you for that. And Manager Hoff?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Reached out to my foreperson in the north. The afternoon guys were out running around when it was snowing earlier, but it's all since stopped. It's windy, but next to no snow. So
Concerned about, but thanks, I appreciate that.
You should be able to make it home.
Let's hope.
Thank you for that. And at this time, if there's no further municipal updates, we will move on to our notices of motion. And the first one here is brought forward by Councillor Fisher, and a seconder, please. Councillor Moore, and I will turn to Councillor Fisher.
All right. Excuse me. Whereas the Township of Springwater is conducting a ward boundary review in preparation for the 2026 municipal election, and whereas the township is currently divided into 5 wards for electoral purposes, be it therefore resolved that council hereby affirms its intent to retain the ward system in the Township of Springwater. I've had quite a few calls from members of the community since our budget, wondering exactly about the ward boundary review, and specifically if I was in favor of a ward system at large. I've been quite clear for some time, as some of us have, I'm not in favor of this, and that's why I'm bringing this forward tonight. I'll give you a few reasons why. I believe it's, well, it is poor representation in lesser populated areas of the municipality. Campaigns require far more resources. I think it actually blocks a lot of people with lesser means from getting into politics. And also those like myself, frankly, who do work full time. So it blocks a lot of those people. So I don't know that we get equal representation throughout the municipality, but also throughout our citizens. Council's at risk of being weighted in certain areas and not represented equally. And it's a very poor system for diverse municipalities. When I say diverse municipalities, frankly, I mean ours. You know, from one end of the ward to the other, we go from very populated to very rural, from very agricultural to increasingly urban. And I think probably the biggest reason I would say I'm not in favor of it and I'd like it to be voted against is we're about to spend $50,000. And I think that that's why a lot of the members of the public reached out to me. $50,000 expenditure to do a ward boundary review and then to potentially scrap the ward system as a whole. I can tell you the people I've talked to are very opposed to it. I know it did come up last term and it was voted down. But I'd like to bring this forward and affirm that we'll not go forward with that, particularly after spending $50,000 of taxpayers' money. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Thompson.
So through the clerk to Director Ainsworth. So this motion, I really think is premature because we really don't know until we get the report back. So if this motion goes forward, does it tie our hands in any way, pending the report and the advice from the consultant? If the consultant gives us an advice, does it tie our hands in any way?
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Council has approved a ward boundary review through a consultant. So that consultant has been retained and actually the kickoff meeting is happening tomorrow between myself and the consultant. The process for a ward boundary review, while it's not legislated, it is very much embedded in previous appeals and previous court cases through various electoral processes, provincial and federal. So that's how these processes are mandated. A motion such as this won't affect how the ward boundary review process takes place. The consultants will continue as originally planned. They are obligated, if there is comments through the public consultation from residents and electors in favor of an at-large system, they are obligated to bring that forward to council, just like they are obligated to bring forward any other comments that are material to the process. At the end of the day, it is council's decision. Council's decision to realign the wards, go with an option that the consultant provides, whatever it is, it's council's decision at the end of the day, can be appealed to the OLT. However, this motion wouldn't have an effect on the actual process that takes place going forward. And I did provide a copy of this draft motion to the consultants, and they have affirmed that it will not affect the process and will not affect the township moving forward through the ward boundary review.
Thank you. I have Councillors Garwood and Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. It's been no secret. I've supported a ward system. I've said it at this table many times. I've been pretty vocal about that, actually. I do believe in equal representation across the municipality. At least at this moment, I still do. But I believe and I see this motion as being a bit preemptive. As we know, and as it was just discussed by Clerk Ainsworth, this council has budgeted funds to commence a ward boundary review. And also, as just noted, this review hasn't even started at the time that this motion has come forward. We often at this table speak about making data-driven decisions. And in this case, in my opinion, we haven't received the data yet. During budget, we spoke of the importance of community and council consultation to determine the future makeup of our wards, but also to discuss the forever and ongoing debate of wards versus an at-large system. Again, while I believe today that a ward system is the best route forward, I also haven't heard that from the community. And I also believe that we are being preemptive. So I want to support this motion, but I personally cannot do so until a ward boundary review has been completed and a recommendation has come forth after consultation and after this council has a full and in-depth discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
You're 100% right, Councillor Garwood. It is preemptive. And I'll tell you why it's preemptive and why I'm bringing it forward. I have 50,000 reasons why I'm bringing it forward. You know, we're about to spend $50,000 of taxpayers' dollars. And what I'm hearing, and I mean this with all due respect, I'm hearing from you that we're still open to using their money, doing a ward boundary review, and then simply going in a totally different direction. What I'm looking for is preemptively hear from members of council so the public can hear that we are moving forward responsibly, spending $50,000 to do what we should be doing, a ward boundary review, not scrapping the ward system as a whole. And frankly, you know, I think you and I both know from both ends of the wards, from completely different bookends, really, of Springwater, we have different concerns for our residents. You know, just this summer, I remember there was a motion for trees in Homer Barrett Park. I've never been in Homer Barrett Park in my life until this summer, right? I don't know it intimately as you would, right? I can bring up examples of every single ward just like that. But I know in my ward, I know intimately what's going on with the subdivisions coming in, with the pipes going in, with policing issues. So I believe it to be imperative in a municipality like Springwater, and in the research I've done, some of which has come from Watson and Associates, in different municipalities, it speaks to diverse municipalities needs ward representation. If we were completely agricultural and rural, I would say, you know, yeah, actually, I would entertain a ward system at large. If we were completely urban, then yes, I would. But with the diversity that we have, with the different communities we have, I'm not in favor of spending $50,000 of taxpayers' money to actually entertain scrapping the whole system as a whole. So you're absolutely right. It is preemptive, but it's preemptive for a reason.
And before I do go to Deputy Cabral, Councillor Alexander, and Councillor Thompson, just for clarification, the clerk had indicated earlier that should this resolution of council be passed, it will not influence the consultants going out to the public and asking whether a ward or at-large system should be there. Is it the intent that this resolution would remove that from part of the consultation with the public? Right, Councillor Fisher.
I think based upon what the clerk said, it can't be removed, right? The public is allowed to say whatever they want. What I'm looking for tonight is an affirmation to those in the public of where their council stands. And so I think if I'm hearing you correctly, Mrs. Ainsworth, that it can't be removed. The people can speak as they want to. But again, if we're about to spend $50,000, we as a council, I think the public deserves to know where we stand on this issue.
And again, before I do, and I have seen staff, it is difficult to know where I stand, because I do have members of the public that are adamant and intimate with their existing ward system. They are advocates for the existing ward system. I've also heard from many people who do not like the fact that when they go to the polls, they elect a minority of council. They get to vote for 3 of 7 people who make the decisions. Over 74% of municipalities in Ontario are at large. So there is validity to a system in that. And it's simply asking Springwater residents, how do you want to vote? Who do you want to vote for? What does that look like? Whether or not I personally support a ward system or an at-large system, I'm not able to make that decision for our residents at this point, because as the other members have said, that information hasn't come before us. And for us to make a decision to spend $50,000 and make a decision before, why even have that included if we're not going to consider that, if we're affirming what our intent is before the information has been gathered. I do have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. For my 2 cents, this is the appropriate time to make this decision. Because if we are going to spend $50,000 on a ward boundary review in order to equalize the number of residents living in each ward, then to later on turn around and go to an at-large system, be quite frank with you, we're throwing away $50,000. So this is the right time to do it. If we're going to spend that money, then it should be for a ward boundary review, so that in the next election, the wards are properly equalized, and that we're prepared to go forward again with another ward-based election. If we're not going to go ahead with a ward-based election and we're going to go at large, might as well do it now and save the $50,000. Because really, if we're going to do a ward boundary review, that's because we're planning on going ahead with a ward system in the future, or there is no reason to do it in the first place. So this is exactly the right time to decide whether or not it's a ward system or an at-large system, because if it's at-large that we're headed to, let's not spend the $50,000.
And before I do go to, I see all the hands. I'm making notes here. I do have Counselor Alexander, Counselor Thompson, and Clerk Ainsworth. But again, it's simply, this is part and parcel. That is the at-large system is part of the review on the electoral process. And again, I think that suggesting that we know what our residents think without asking them, we're simply asking our residents what they want. And there's a very good possibility that they're completely satisfied with the way that it is. But I do think it's important. To my knowledge, we have not had this indicated in the 30 years that Springwater has been in existence. So asking residents how they want to vote and who they want to vote for, I don't see the harm in doing it, considering it's already part of the scope of the work of the consultant that we've hired. Clerk Ainsworth and then Counselor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just for council's information, any changes to the electoral process, whether it's wards or at large, is appealable to the OLT. So with that, it is very important that council goes through a process for public consultation and meets all of the requirements of previous court cases in the event that the decision of council is appealed, so that there's information to back it up to ensure that all of the points have been hit that the OLT has previously established, as well as the courts have previously established.
Thank you. I have Counselor Alexander, Thompson, Fisher, Moore, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I do believe it's always important to go out to the public and see, what the pulse is, what their thoughts are. I also think we all run on certain beliefs when we run for council that are our own beliefs, and that we probably are going to stand by them the whole way through. From my perspective, a ward system is one of those. I feel like at the municipal level, it allows you to avoid partisan politics and people to run as a party. It forces you to run individually. As a ward councillor, you are accountable to the residents in your ward, to the fact that I have people that show up at my door that I've never met, but have found out where I lived. And then if I don't call them back enough, they show back up at my house. And you know what? That's okay, because that's what I'm there for. I'm there to be accountable to them. It's much more difficult if they have 7 different people they can do that to, because everyone can kind of say, oh, no, not really my problem. As a ward councillor, it is your problem to get back to those people, and you are their point of contact. So I think that's very important. I also look from a little bit of a person, not even personal. So we're growing a lot. The majority of the growth in this township is going to happen at the south end. I worry we end up in a scenario where, because we have a much larger population in the south end, the north end doesn't have proper representation. And I am from the north end. There is differences between the south and the north. And I really feel strongly that we need to be equally represented across the board.
And thank you for that. And I think that in here where it says currently divided into 5 wards, Oro-Medonte has their wards, and this consultant could come back to us and suggest that we actually need 6 wards and then appoint a deputy mayor. So divided up by 6. So there's going to be multiple, and hopefully this is an in-depth report that provides maybe even options that we haven't thought about. So to constrict us to a specific idea without hearing from the consultant, I think that we are pigeonholing ourselves. Counselor Thompson and then Fisher.
Just a clarification on the concerns about a ward system and having localized representative. Even with a ward system, any resident or any taxpayer can run in any ward that they want. So a ward system does not guarantee local representation.
Counselor Fisher?
I disagree with that statement. I can tell you that it would be very hard to run and win. I think we all know that outside of your ward. People do like representation within their ward. I think we probably all experienced that when we were knocking on doors this last election, where we lived, where our kids went to school. These things are important to people within our communities. So I think if you polled people, they would like a local representative who frankly, to Councillor Alexander's point, does have accountability. I have accountability to the people I see on a weekly basis as I walk my dog, drive to work. So I think there is a level of accountability. I'll also say this, I live in the South and it is becoming more populated. And one day when I'm not on council, I would hate to see representation only from my ward, if you will, right? Because I think it alienates people in other wards, like Ward 1, 2, and 3. They're more rural, they're more agricultural, and I think that they could potentially see less representation as we see more population come into the South. We need representation across of Springwater, and I think to the deputy mayor's point, now is the time for council, before we spend $50,000, to say to the public where we, maybe individually, and that's why I will ask for a recorded vote actually on this one, where we individually stand. And, I go back to this. I think representation, we always say after every election, we say that the voter turnout was staggeringly low. From federally, provincially, municipally, it's so low. I think that we're not getting enough young people into politics, frankly. It's actually seen as a bit of a gray haired, and I'm going grayer by the day here. But as a place for those people. And so if we want more people in politics who are younger, vibrant, have different ideas, which we always say we do, I think that this system, and again, reading reports for other municipalities from Watson and Associates and other things, they do speak to that. When you have to essentially run the equivalent of a mayoral race just to be a councillor, it keeps a lot of people from running from office. It's far more expensive, it's more time consuming, and you're overseeing a larger area. So I think that this is the best time to do this. And yeah, that's my piece.
I have CEO Schmidt and Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I believe the deputy mayor may have already answered part of what I was going to say. That said, I believe there was a comment earlier about maybe not proceeding with this contract. And I would just indicate to council that if that's your choice, be cautious because the contract's executed. And so there are implications there. So I believe since then, the conversation has changed. But I do caution you in walking that path.
And thinking before I do go to Councillor Moore, not only has the contract been executed, but if Clerk Ainsworth could elaborate on the mandate to have the review. Is there, through the Election Act, do we have to do this because of the variance or is this just we've noticed that our wards are already outweighted? Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There is no requirement under the Municipal Act or Municipal Elections Act for a municipality to conduct a review. However, the acceptable practice through OLT and through the courts is if there is more than a 25% differential between wards, that is what the trigger is for a review, which is why staff brought it forward to council for consideration through the budget.
Thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. And that also was going to be my point too. If we could just back up a little bit. I was under the understanding that we had to do this because of the wards being outweighted. And so, but I also remember when it came to budget, the piece about ward at large system was an add-on. It was an add-on, so it wasn't part of the original ask. So I would suggest that we go back to the original ward boundary review as it was presented during the budget. And if somebody would like to add a motion that says the at ward large system should be reviewed, then I would suggest we do that separately.
Thank you. And if we could just have clarification through Clerk Ainsworth, as it was myself who brought forward that, was that something that was added to the scope of work that the consultant was already doing, or is that part and parcel to a ward boundary review?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. My advice through the budget was that a ward boundary review is a holistic approach, and a consultant would receive comments from the public and analyze for council through part of their report to council. an at-large system. So they would identify if there were, how many comments were received, what the public might have put out comments for an at-large system. So it's all part of the scope originally for a ward boundary review process.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So I understand that piece, but that is not the same as us specifically asking the question. That is receiving comments and then reporting back to council about what they heard, but that is not the same as asking those specific questions.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The consultants were not directed, and there was not in the scope specifically to provide comments and try to receive feedback on an at-large system. However, that is just the process that ward boundary reviews take through consultants. They provide all of the information to the public and then seek feedback on the electoral process in its entirety versus just specific questions that council might want to pose. One of the important pieces of a ward boundary review is that it should be done without undue political influence. So that is why generally municipalities hire a consultant. It's an at arm's length hired professional expert on ward boundary reviews who conduct the process in similar fashions to different municipalities around the province, with some tweaking depending on the fabric of the municipality itself, whether it's a city or more rural, smaller municipality. So there are a few tweaks, but overall it's the same process that happens throughout different municipalities.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral, and then Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just gonna point out the obvious. This boundary review has happened in the past. And that's exactly what I feel it is a ward boundary review to establish the boundaries for the wards. The number of wards isn't up to the consultant, I would suggest. That would be up to council. We want 5 members sitting here. We divvy up the pie by 5, and if we want 3, then we divvy up the pie by 3 and have a mayor and a deputy mayor, I guess. That I don't feel is something that the consultant would suggest to us, because if that were the case, they'd have about 1,000 councillors down in Toronto, and they're down to 22. Each one of those people probably has about 200,000 people in their ward. And I do think that this is the appropriate time to do it. And it's not lost on me that this has come up before and was defeated. And it's also not lost on me that it was the same person driving it last time that seems to be driving it this time. So I would actually just simply ask for us to call a vote and put this to rest.
And Deputy Cabral, you did call the vote, but I will remind you that I do have Councillor Garwood and Fisher that had their name on there. So if it's up to
I'm
you.
just saying, I wouldn't ask to call the vote, but I'm certainly prepared to wait.
Councillor Garwood and then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think a lot of us are saying the same thing here, but I think there needs to be some clarification. Again, there's been a few times I've written down that members have said before we spend $50,000. We have already spent $50,000. We have already taxed those residents. We are doing a ward boundary review. No one is saying that we are not doing that. So that needs to be remembered, but this is also just a portion of it. And maybe that's my opinion, and maybe I'm viewing it incorrectly in that sense. My question is for Clerk Ainsworth. Is there a timeline for the consultant and for the review? Apologies if you've already mentioned this in the past, but I think that would help council as well with a little bit of clarity. Of course, if it's going to take 2 years, then maybe this is a timely discussion. But if it's going to take 6 months, then I don't see why this can't wait 6 months, seeing as an election's still 2.5 years away.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The township, if they undertake a ward boundary review, needs to have it complete and approved and any appeals dealt with by December 31st of the year prior to the election. So December 31st, 2025. Everything has to be finalized, including any appeals. The township's process, the schedule of work is to have a final report to council in November, December of this year. Public consultation, there will be 2 parts of public consultation. One will take place prior to the summer. One will take place after the summer with council individual consultation thrown out through that data analysis throughout the summer. So the first council will be presented with preliminary results. Then there will be a second piece of consultation, and the council will be presented with the final report as well as the recommendations or options from the consultant for council's consideration.
Follow on, and then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, through Mayor Coughlin to the clerk. Can you advise if a ward boundary review officially through the same process has taken place in Springwater's 30-year history since amalgamation?
Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The last ward boundary review in the township was conducted prior to the 2014 election. Previous to that, I apologize, I don't have the history.
Thank you. And seeing no more questions Councillor Fisher, my apologies, Councillor Fisher.
Just going back to what Councillor Garwood had said, that we'd already spent $50,000. We've allotted $50,000 for this, and the work has not yet commenced. So, you know, on the eve of commencing with the ward boundary review, I think it is imperative for citizens to know that we're not wasting their money. Going back to what's been said before, I think it is an opportune time for us to do that. I think it's actually very simple. You know, if you're a person sitting at this table right now who is in favor of an at-large system, vote no to it, you know, if that's what you stand for, right? I don't agree with it. I believe in the ward system. I believe in it enough that I'm coming forward with this today. I don't have a foot in either camp on this. I'm committed to the ward system enough that I want to ensure the taxpayers that when $50,000 of your money is spent, it's being spent for a purpose, not to see the abolition of your ward system and the loss of $50,000 essentially. So I think, and that's why I asked for a recorded vote. If you're a councillor, mayor, or deputy mayor who sits up here right now who is okay with the abolition of the ward system, then vote no to it. It's pretty simple. But if you are in favor of the ward system, which I am, and some members have expressed in the past that they are, then vote yes for my motion. And I'd like to call the vote, seeing as there's nobody else.
Thank you for that. And the difference between having awarded, again, CEO Schmidt did speak to that the meeting is happening tomorrow for commencement, so it has been awarded. So I don't know how much of the $50,000 has been, the check has been written, but it's been awarded. So if we were to pull back from this exercise, there would be some costs associated to that. And I did hear you ask for the vote to be called, and I did hear you suggest that if I vote in favor of this, I am voting against it. But again, it's simply going out to the public and asking the public their opinion. There's also a suggestion at the county level when we have had votes to reduce the number of county councillors. There is accusations that we will not reduce the number of county councillors because we're trying to preserve our own positions. So that could be also said of this council, that by continuing with the ward position, we're preserving our own positions. This is simply, we have hired a consultant, let the consultant do a fulsome, and hopefully it comes back and we can all just move forward with the ward system, but doing our due diligence and asking residents how they would like to vote. So when I do not support this, it will not be because I am adamant that we need an at-large system. I am adamant that we go out and we ask our residents how they want to vote before making a preconceived decision for them. Councillor Fisher.
If that's your stance, Mayor Coughlin, that's fine. I'm glad you stated it, but I still stand behind what I had said, whether you like it or not, that if you do not want to be part of the ward system by voting no to this, that's what you're saying. And I'm stating to you that I am in favor of the ward system, and that's how I intend to vote. So again, like I said before, I call the vote.
Thank you. And it was a recorded vote that was called. We'll turn to Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Would any member of council like me to reread the motion?
Please.
The motion would read, whereas the Township of Springwater is conducting a ward boundary review in preparation of the 2026 municipal election, and whereas the township is currently divided into 5 wards for electoral purposes, be it therefore resolved that council hereby affirms its intent to retain the ward system in the Township of Springwater. And a recorded vote was requested by Councillor Fisher, Once I state your name, please state yes or no. Counselor Garwood,
No.
Counselor Alexander,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
No, no.
Counselor Moore,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral,
Yes.
and Mayor Coughlin.
No.
That motion is carried.
Thank you. We are now moving on to our second notice of motion, and I have this by Counselor Alexander and seconded by Deputy Cabral. I will now turn to Counselor Alexander. Just your microphone, please.
Long night already. Okay, thank you. So the motion is that council, having considered correspondence regarding the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, hereby support this correspondence and attached motion from the Township of Tiny, and further that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Township of Tiny and the Severn Sound Environmental Association as a part of their submission to the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. So just quick little preamble. I'm hoping everyone had a chance to read the very lengthy, but well done. Resolution from Tiny. It is essentially saying that we do support this. Springwater is a member of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. Really the piece behind it is it's between multiple municipalities throughout Canada and the US that do support, recognize that the Great Lakes are, our water is put there. There's a lot of pollutants that go in the water. And it's really asking that the both federal and provincial government recognize this, and, you know, we support us by providing funding for these initiatives, because they can't be done municipality by municipality. That's not going to solve the problem. It is a problem that everyone needs to contribute to. So I'm happy to take any questions if there's any questions.
Counselor, are there any questions on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to our notice of motion by Counselor Fisher regarding half-load exemptions. Seconder for this, please. Counselor Alexander, and I will turn to Counselor Fisher.
All right. Whereas the Highway Traffic Act regulates in part weight limits of vehicles on public highways and roadways, and whereas certain farming operations are impacted by seasonal half-load limits, and whereas the Agricultural Advisory Committee has indicated in their 2024 work plan that they would like to lobby for the exemption of half-load limits for various farming operations. Be it therefore resolved that council hereby directs staff to provide a report outlining legislation surrounding half-load limits, including exempt vehicles, authority provided to municipalities, enforcement and half-load permit exemptions in relation to the request for farming vehicles to be exempt from half-load limits. Give you a bit of a synopsis. The Agricultural Advisory Committee has had discussions regarding this. This would be much easier to have these half-load limits exempt from farming vehicles. I'll give you some examples, you know, if fertilizer is being moved from field to field, large farming implements, even times when they're putting in tile drainage, things like this. So the Agricultural Advisory Board would like to have staff directed to look into this.
Are there any questions or comments to Deputy Cabral and Counselor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. My only comment with this is in today's day and age, there are family farm operations that enlarge by the consolidation of other farms, buying other property that previously they may have even rented. But what it does is it makes the farming operation somewhat disjointed, where one farmer may have several pieces of property and be farming those pieces of property, yet have one home farm. And their ability really to be able to maintain and continue their farming operation can be impeded by this, especially if they're in the grain business and they're filling elevators. They need a way, because they're driving heavy vehicles, dumps, semis, that kind of thing, that are licensed for the road. Yet this puts them in a precarious position where they may not be able to bring those materials and farm products to their main farm where they are storing them. It's absolutely impossible for a farmer who has a consolidated operation with several plots of land to actually have these storage facilities on each individual property. So I do thank Councillor Fisher. This has been something that's come up in the past term when I was Ward 1 councillor from farmers in that area. So it is an issue, and it's progressively becoming more of a problem with farm consolidations.
Councillor Garwood and then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Clerk Ainsworth. Clerk Ainsworth, are you able to advise council in regards to municipalities' ability to permit exemptions when it comes to half loads and what our ability is and or is not?
I will defer to Manager Ha for this.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Garwood. I'll take a stab at this. There are very limited things that we are allowed to do under the actual Highway Traffic Act. We are allowed to issue exemptions, typically for like a one-off move or to one to individuals, as opposed to an entire sector, I guess, of the economy. I'm obviously the request for a report to come back. I'm more than happy to delve into the Highway Traffic Act and provide that information back to council, and that spells out what is and isn't allowed under the HTA.
Thank you, Manager Ha. And if you could maybe elaborate on ways that the municipality does work with local businesses. So whereby local businesses would have the opportunity to put up an surety or a bond that would secure the road, which would allow them to move their goods at a full load, whereby they would be responsible for any damage done, and then we would repeat the process annually.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So one good example that is ongoing with the township is Ritchie Forest Products that operates on Floss Road 8, which would be a half load road. They've been doing this long before I was with the township. They post a bond with us for the use of Floss Road 8 during the half load season, and we patrol the road. Actually flew it with the drone this year. Before the half load season starts, we monitor it through half loads for any damage. Travel it at the end to see whether or not there was any damage. If there was, repairs will be made from that bond that was posted, and then the remainder would be returned to them as such. The agreement with them is that they use Floss Road 8 and no other road. Any full load trucks that are accessing, say, using baseline could be fined up to $200 per occurrence. And that business owner works very well with us and ensures that their trucks use just the one route. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just to add on, Manager Ha, in regards to the exemptions that are allowed under the Highway Traffic Act that the municipality may provide, the HTA is very specific in that the request must be submitted in writing to the municipality. And if granted, a permit needs to be issued. That way, if they are stopped, because it's not the municipality enforcing these requirements, it is the police and the MTO. So they need to be able to produce this permit from the municipality in order to prove that they are provided the allowance for the specific days, specific roads, to avoid having the fine. If they don't have that permit, unfortunately, they would be liable to a fine under the Act.
Thank you. I have Councillors Garwood, Fisher, and Deputy. Oh, maybe I'm looking at the wrong list here. My apologies. Councillor Fisher.
There. So one thing I hope to achieve with this, going back to the example that Mr. Ha just gave, that is one individual business. The agri business as it is right now, it's farms dotting our entire municipality, right? And so we can't just relegate them to one road, right? They're all over the place. And to the deputy mayor's point, and it's very valid, you know, we don't have 100-acre farms anymore. Those are hobby farms. Right now, we have people who are cash cropping thousands of acres. So to move farming implements from stitch of land to stitch of land and moving from grain elevator to grain elevator, you know, that's what they're really looking to do. I also will say that, you know, large construction outfits or gravel outfits, you know, that's a constant usage of the road. Farming really, you know, if we were to take a look at a scenario, it would be somebody moving fertilizer to a certain field, right? It wouldn't be day in and day out. It would probably be a 1 or 2 day thing, moving large tractors around. So I would like for the report to really look at agriculture in the community and focus on how we can make their lives easier. So.
Thank you. And as part of that, before I go back to you, understanding that currently farm implementation, fuel and feed are already exempt, what additional, it says here, various farming operations. So what would be in addition to the implementations or that are already exempt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So like an example would be a large tractor would be exempt. It's not a licensed commercial vehicle, so they can actually travel anywhere at any point. This would be more the restrictions are tend to be around the commercial vehicle, the licensed commercial tractor trailer that would be no different, say, than a gravel hauling operation. The movement of fuel, like the delivery of diesel fuel for tractors or home heating oil or those sort of things, are exempt currently under the Highway Traffic Act. The hauling of the milk, like from a dairy operation, is currently exempt from the restrictions. Yeah.
Feed as well.
Feed, so delivery of feed between working farms would be exempt because obviously you have to feed your livestock. Yeah, that's sort of most of the exemptions. Again, I can spell it out much more in the report.
Okay, and thank you for that. And I think too that when this report does come back, understanding that half loads, it affects industry across the township. It doesn't matter if you're in agriculture or whatever your industry is, that short window does impact many local businesses, where regardless if you're delivering lumber to a site or stone or whatever it is that you're doing, many businesses are impacted. So I'm curious then to understanding Clearview 3 years ago created a full load route across their township, connecting the King's highways through the industrial areas. So I wasn't sure if that was something that could be contemplated. And I understand too, even if the municipality does move towards providing exemptions on our roads, we're going to rely on the county, whether it's Horseshoe Valley Road or any other half load roads to connect that. So this would have to be done in tandem with the county as well. I have Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think it might be appropriate, given that we've just about covered everything that might come out of that report, that maybe staff pretty much. But I just wanted to point out, the half load's a bylaw. It's a township bylaw for our roads. And the reason that I could say that is because over on the 2nd, to get to the pit, the half load doesn't start until after the pit. When you get over to the 10th, our own pit, you can come all the way from 93 to the pit, but unfortunately it's half load the rest of the way down. And I can also look at FS Partners over on the 8th, same thing occurs there. And given that Ritchie's is using the 8th, I certainly hope that a permit has been issued to them and it's not just a nice little agreement that we've made with them where they're going to put a bond up. But I think if staff's given the opportunity, because really what we're talking about is the agricultural community, dump trucks and stuff like that, I can tell you right now, they're going to be going down the 10th and they're not going to care about that half load sign. But they won't be going down the middle of Elmvale, so that's probably a good thing.
Their CVORs are I guess, to their own discretion on how they want to handle that. But I have Councillor Garwood and I'm not seeing any other further hands after that.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Through you to Manager Ha. Would you be able to also speak to how our road infrastructure is constructed? In all transparency here, I did ask this question to Manager Ha earlier today, but I think it would be information that all members of council should hear. I believe you had noted something around the lines of our roads aren't necessarily built for full load year round all the time, but in certain scenarios, there are businesses who might invest in a reconstruction of sorts during that road project to bring it to that capacity, like Floss Road 8 West, for example, and FS Partners. So could you speak to that?
Manager Ha?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Garwood. Excuse me. Yes, you are correct. So we, as part of the township bylaw, one of the things we can establish is where half loads are and aren't. Starts and stops. My understanding is on Floss Road 8, when FS Partners went in, at one of the times when work was done on Floss Road 8, they provided funds to add for more granular, more asphalt to build the road stronger from County Road 27, which is a full load road, into FS Partners to allow them to be able to have the large deliveries of fuel. Most of our township roads aren't built to that standard for obvious reasons, cost being the greatest one. To build a road to an MTO standard, or build all our roads to an MTO standard would be next to impossible tax wise. So yes, there are situations similar to the reason that Floss Road 10 from 93 in past our gravel pit happens to be a full load road is it's essentially built on a gravel pit. So it is a better built road, but not all of our township roads are built to that standard for sure.
All on Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, and thank you, Manager Ha. I do think a staff report is necessary. I'd like to broaden the spectrum on this a bit, and I'm going to get there in a moment. Personally, the amount that I've learned in the last 3 days on half loads is actually incredible, and I find it very fascinating. So I thank Manager Ha for being available for my multiple phone calls. But I think this is information that we all should have. I look back to similar motions that I have proposed in the past in regards to let's gather the data, let's all be on the same page, let's be educated in our decisions, and then let's move forward. And I see this as exactly that. Of course, we know agriculture is, I believe in the last official plan, it was noted as the largest industry within our municipality. I'm sure that still stands today. And our agricultural community spans from across all of our wards, and that's important. But I can also see the phone calls that are going to be coming from other industry. I'm not saying gravel pits necessarily, but we also know we do have other business in this municipality. In addition to that, I'll use the example that Manager Ha and I were just speaking to, is a local business in the community investing into our infrastructure to make it better. That wouldn't necessarily fall within a exemption of sorts under a certain industry. Again, that's just one example. So we've asked these incredible community partners and businesses to partner with us to enhance our infrastructure and then provide an exemption elsewhere and not for them as well. So I think, again, by no means am I saying we start blanketing exemptions. I believe it was identified that that's not even in our purview, but I could see the importance of a staff report. So if I may, and I have mentioned this to Councillor Fisher, I'm not just throwing on him right now. Would you be amendable to the last line in your motion where it speaks to that, and I'll read it out, that council hereby directs staff to provide a report outlining legislation surrounding half load limits, including exempt vehicles, authority provided to municipalities, enforcement, and half load permit exemptions in relation to the request for farming. And then if I could insert there, maybe we change farming to agriculture and other types or use, agriculture and other types of use or industry to be exempt from half-load permits or limits. This would then, in my assumption, provide a more fulsome report covering various industry within the municipality, allow us to then come back to the table, including agriculture, and look at what we can do municipal-wide and have all the information before we're making a decision. That's my thought. Again, I don't disagree with you, Councillor Fisher, by any means. I just see this being a benefit of having additional information. Again, the information I got from one staff member today was incredibly helpful, and I would like all of us to have that. And my questions weren't just specific to agriculture. So thank you.
And thank you. And before we do, if I can just add this before we get into a debate back and forth, the request for a load permit exemption, regardless of if it's a hydro vehicle in an emergency, if it's a stone truck, if it's a whatever it is, the exemption process would be the same regardless of what the vehicle is. So I think even in that in itself, when Manager Ha does present to us what the process looks like, whether it's a highway tractor or whatever it is, regardless of it's not what's in the vehicle, it's what the tonnage is. So it's either 20 or 40 and carry on. So Manager Ha, if you could, when you do come back with providing us the half load permit, load exemptions in relation to requests for farming vehicles, would it be any different if that said farming vehicles or if it just said and half load permit exemptions, period?
No, it wouldn't be any different. That would be the process that I would spell out. The one thing the report will include is what the exemptions currently are within the Highway Traffic Act. And whatever else I can pull out of the Highway Traffic Act that'll help us.
And thank you for that. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I just want to point out that there is a process in place for the one-offs in relationship to opening it up to other. I think that's a whole different ball of wax. We're talking about the agricultural community with mostly consolidated farms where their business is being, they don't have a choice about leaving stuff out on the field. You know, when it's time to come off or it's time to take off, they got to do it. If we're talking about FS Partners wanting to pay for road reconstruction, once again, I think that's a different ball of wax, because when that happens, then you can change the bylaw in order to allow them to have usage of that road that they just finished helping pay for. They don't need to have an exemption then, because that's pretty much what happened there. If they paid for the extra load capacity so that they could keep using it, all we did is we made that stretch through the bylaw not a heavy load area. It starts after that stretch, and all the other vehicles that are heavyweight do have a means by which to get through the township. Just that
I'm not going to debate that.
the report is, it's pretty straightforward here. I think the intent was to help farmers, and now we're wanting to help everybody, and I think that might as well take all the half load signs down.
No, that would make a lot of people happy, but I think that would be very costly to the municipality. It would make a lot of business people happy, but a lot of residents who bear the load of that. No, the intention was just to acknowledge that half loads do impact most businesses, I would say, that do have that. I have Councillor Garwood and Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you to the Deputy Mayor for those comments. Again, I understand the concerns the farming communities had. I lived on one for 21 years, so it's not abnormal to me to understand those frustrations. But once again, I'm not disagreeing. I completely agree with this. What I'm saying is, let's just broaden our spectrum to get the information, data-driven decisions. It's been said at this table multiple times over the last month or so. We're not saying that we are removing the farming or the agricultural community. That is going to be a huge part of the report, seeing as it's our largest industry within this municipality. But again, we're also not saying that we're including everyone to give everyone exemptions. That is not the purpose of this. We are not doing anything. We are asking for a report. That report It's going to have information from our knowledgeable staff so then we can make an effective and informed decision. That's all I'm saying here is just tweak about 3 words in there and we can add it in. Then everyone's getting that report that they desire, because Councillor Fisher's motion that was brought forward, great, focuses on agriculture, completely agree. But we also have other industry within the municipality that we can also learn a bit about. It doesn't mean that we're going that direction, but then we also have that data for when the phone does ring from that local industry or that local business that says, well, why was it just one group that was consulted? We can say, well, we now have the data and it makes sense to permit our agricultural community to bring their cash crop out during a specific time of year because it's quieter for them, it's off season. Then we have data to be able to reflect back on our decisions. That's all I'm asking.
Councillor Fisher?
There we go. I'd like to keep it just with agriculture, and I have considered what you had said previously, Councillor Garwood. My apprehension is that we open this up far too much to all sorts of different industries, and I think the usage, having grown up on a farm just like yourself, I think the usage that farmers will put on the roads in terms of anyway, I think the usage would be relatively minimal, and I think that the wear and tear on our roads would be negligible. So that's why I think we can speak to that specific industry. Whereas if we open this up, I think it's really open to all sorts of interpretation from different businesses, and I think it could potentially wreak havoc on our roads. So I would like to keep it just specifically to agriculture, although I do hear what you're saying, but I would like to keep it that way.
And thank you for that. And as Manager Hod did state earlier, load permit exemptions and a report on load permit exemptions will be based on the regulations and not the individual vehicle. So we can sit here all night of whether is, I mean, Deputy Cabral asks often for one word to be changed into a different word. And while this is semantics, this report is going to bring back information that will be transferable to all industry. So if there's no appetite to simply add a word, I feel that if we move in that direction, we will be able to do so once the report has come back. If there are no further comments or questions, council, all those in favor? And that has carried. At this time, are there any additional notices of motion? We're not seeing any items for future consideration. Not seeing any. May I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws, please? I have Councillor Alexander and Councillor Moore that the bylaws listed here be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. The 2024-019 appointment to Elmvale Community Recreation Association Executive, 2024-020 Animal Control Pound Facility Contract, 2024-021 Insurance and Risk Management Services Contract, 5000-384ZB 2024-006 Van Velzen at 2512 Sunnydale Road. Any questions or comments on these? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? I have Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood that bylaw 2024-022 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on March 20th, 2024, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That has carried. And a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting, please. I have Councillor Fisher and Garwood that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 9:50 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on April 3rd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has